Hello there, very good morning to you on this Tuesday morning. The Prime Minister has come under pressure to take China more seriously.
That's after the alleged spy Yang Tenbo was unmasked by the courts, revealing a web of influence amongst the British establishment.
Well, it comes as Prince Andrew, at the centre of the scandal, confirms he will not be attending the royal Christmas function at Sandringham.
Sir Keir Starmer will today visit troops serving on Estonia's border with Russia in a push to support funding for Ukraine. Catherine Forster has the latest.
Welcome to Tallinn, the bitterly cold capital of Estonia. The Prime Minister is here following his trip to Norway. He's come in for a lot of criticism about all these foreign trips. I'll bring you the details of what he's up to shortly.
Lucy Letby's lawyer has said they will be asking the Court of Appeal to immediately review all of her convictions because an expert witness has now changed his mind on the cause of death of 3 of the babies.
Brexit betrayal. Brussels takes the UK to court over breaking the terms of our Brexit deal, hindering the PM's attempt at a reset with Europe.
Rachel Reeves' national insurance hikes will cost children's hospices nearly £5 million more every year. Calls are now for urgent action to stop services being cut.
And it's the time of year when family feuds are put aside for festive cheer. So we're asking this morning, should families reconcile at Christmas?
And in sport this morning, 2 goals in the last 2 minutes, settle a 1-1 draw between Bournemouth and West Ham. England get thumped by New Zealand in the 3rd test. And who is the Manchester United mole linking team lineups?
Hello there, good morning. A dry but rather cloudy start and turning wet and windy from the west. I'll be here later with all the details.
Well, we're going to be talking moles at some stage then today, are we not? The time now just after 6 o'clock, it's 2 minutes past 6. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster and this is GB News Breakfast.
What do you mean you're turning the lights on at a Christmas tree?
No, I'm having terrible trouble with my lights.
Oh, you're
Oh, my
having
goodness.
your... Oh, right.
Terrible trouble.
This tree saga. I mean, what, it's been a week since we got the tree.
Yes.
Now the lights are going on.
Well, look, honestly, it takes less time to get Trafalgar Square's tree
I mean,
up
you
than
were
it
the one
does
criticising Trafalgar Square's tree.
I know, it's so ridiculous. It's taken a week, so finally got it done. So now outside because I had to buy all these lights, because I couldn't get a refund on one set of lights, and they said, well, no, we don't refund Christmas stuff. So I said, well, I'll have to... I know, I went to this place, and I said, and they were the wrong coloured lights, and I said, look, can you change these? Can I change them? No, we don't exchange or give refunds for Christmas items. I'm like... Why?
But legally, they have to.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Christmas item's just an item. It's not a Christmas item.
I didn't want to cause a scene. So then they said, well, you can, on this special occasion, you can change it for something else. So I ended up buying all these other boxes of lights. I've got too many lights. So I'm trying to go...
Is your house now like the local...
I don't want it to be. I don't want it to be. But outside, I've got this little... So I thought I'll try and wrap it around. But the thing is so long, then I get caught on the... It was in the dark, so I tried doing it with the lights. It's been an absolute disaster.
What a saga.
Have you ever watched that film, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation?
I am Chevy Chase.
Yes.
I know, that's me. It is.
It's a very good film.
I know, it is very funny.
I need to see photographs now of the lights.
Oh,
we
my
need evidence.
goodness.
And maybe
Okay.
that can be a shout-out this morning, because, you know, it is quite entertaining as we drive into work. I don't know if you're passing any
I love
houses
it.
that are all blingy all night.
real...
There's one on my lane where they
Yeah.
have a Santa Claus twice the size of the house.
It's one of those ones that are pumped up with air.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how do...
And they deflate it in the day,
just
but
like
all the
that.
lights. But the kids love it.
But I do have a question. Where do you start? Do you start with the plug end and then work your way, or do you start with the other end, and then you have to keep walking around?
I think you do 2 things. You've got to find out that the lights work. There's no point putting them up and then plugging them in.
Yeah, I'm doing it with the lights on so I can see. Yeah, so that's fine.
So you plug them in, make sure they work.
Yeah.
And then I would say you put the lights on first and then finally put the plug in.
Right.
That's what I'd do.
But
I'll come round and do them this afternoon.
Eamonn's the expert.
When was the last time you put some Christmas lights
Well,
on?
listen, could you imagine Sandringham, right, with all the
yeah.
royals are going to gather? There'd be as much chance of that being festive looking and full of Santa and ho, 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 as... I just don't... they won't be doing it. They won't be doing it the way us real-life people do it.
think you're right.
But anyway, the Duke of York, that's Prince Andrew, and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson, they will not be joining the rest of the royal family for Christmas at Sandringham. And I think they must this morning be thinking, lucky old us, how fantastic this is.
I don't think so. I think that particularly Sarah Ferguson will be gutted. She'd wanted to be invited all those years. Finally, the block had gone. She's had cancer this year, hasn't she? And now her ex-husband
She's going to have her
gone
own
and
house.
muddied the waters all
her
over again.
ex-husband there, her daughter's there, friends they can bring round. They can invite in a chef, a cook, anything they want.
I think the daughters are still going to Sandringham, as far as I'm aware.
Oh, don't be stupid. They're
And
not
all the
going to be.
babies.
They're not going to be doing that.
They will.
They're not going to be doing that.
Oh, we'll
so
see.
they leave their mum and dad shivering in the corner.
Yes, because they want to be close to the
Nonsense.
crown rather
Who have we
than
got
the
reporting
disgraced
on
Duke
this?
of York. We have Theo in the studio because we want to talk
Theo.
about it's all to do with
yeah.
Yang Tengbo, who was unmasked yesterday. He is the alleged spy. Let's speak to Theo. He's the former political editor at LBC.
Very good.
Thoughts on all of this?
Look, with all due respect to Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, he's obviously made an error with deciding to bring this gentleman in to run Pitch at the Palace, Yang Tengbo. This was a man who came in as a junior civil servant to the UK to study for a master's degree in public policy at York University, and somehow inveigled his way right into the heart of the British establishment. But this isn't all about Prince Andrew. I think he's got his punishment. It's going to be served. No pigs in blankets and Christmas crackers at Sandringham for the Duke of York. This is really about Keir Starmer now and his judgment, because we've got this National Security Act that part of it hasn't been implemented, where there's going to be a referral scheme where if you have links to companies and you are basically at the behest of countries with interests in the UK, you have to declare these interests, and there is an enhanced level, there's an enhanced tier for countries, Isabel, where there is a serious concern about what they're trying to do.
So
and is China on that list?
We spoke to Tom Tugendhat about this. He claims that when he left office as security minister in the summer, it was all ready to go, and he doesn't understand what the dither and delay is on behalf of the government. But in the meantime, you know, I'm not entirely clear, and I suppose perhaps we never will be, because this is the nature of this being quite secretive and the work of the MI6. What exactly has happened here that is illegal, that has got him barred from the country? Because, you know, he's claiming he's not a spy. He's acting effectively as some form of trade envoy, as was Prince Andrew in reverse. The lines are very blurred. It's very difficult to see how much pressure the Prime Minister really is under, given we don't understand fully what's gone on here.
This goes beyond Yang Tengbo. This is about the influence that the Chinese state and Chinese government and the Communist Party has in Britain, whether it's in universities, businesses, at the very top of the royal family. And I think the concern is from the likes of MI5 and from MI6 is that if China is given carte blanche to infiltrate parts of the British state, and it can do that, then it can position the UK government in a way that actually serves China's interests and not necessarily British interests, especially at a time now we've got Donald Trump coming into the White House. He's very hawkish on China.
He's invited Xi Jinping to his inauguration.
Yes, and I've seen
that gives Keir Starmer licence to make overtures to Beijing as well, doesn't it? It's a very difficult line for the Prime Minister to walk, because look at the state of our economy. Terrible growth figures again last week. You know, so much pressure to try and reboot the economy. And otherwise he's going to have to raise taxes again. And
you're right to say that, and because, of course, HSBC is one of those companies that said, hang on a moment, we can't put China on the enhanced list, because if we do that, then actually that's going to have a serious impact on our business in China and Chinese business in the UK. We've got to take a much more grown-up approach. Keir Starmer was the first Prime Minister to meet the Chinese Premier in 6 years. We've got Rachel Reeves is due to travel to Beijing in January to secure closer economic ties. And if we take the problem that Keir Starmer has is if he takes a much harder line, let's say China is placed on this enhanced list, it could do irreparable damage to our relationship with China at a time, as well, as you rightly say, we're trying to secure closer economic ties with an economic powerhouse.
OK. All right, Theo, thanks very much. We'll have more from you in the 7 o'clock, but for now, see you later. Thanks.
If you want to open your door to Andrew and bring him in on the day and make sure he gets a meal, the offer obviously is there. No, I don't like him.
I know. Yeah, you've had some entertaining... Oh, please share that story
No, I've got so many
About your
stories
name.
about him. He's gruff. He's not. He's what's
Entitled?
the word I would use for him? No, he's just brazen. He's. Have you ever met him, Theo?
No, I've never met him. I think I've attended a couple of
He's very
events.
superior.
Yes, he is. He's the grand old Duke of York.
He is, yeah, without a doubt. So, I mean, I would very quickly, I think, sort of tell him, go and throw a hook somewhere, mate. I wouldn't be interested in him. I wouldn't pay him any respect.
I feel terribly sorry for the king, who has had a difficult start to his sovereignty. What's the phrase I'm looking for? His
reign.
His reign, because he's obviously had his cancer diagnosis, but his brother is just constantly undermining him. I do wonder if William and Charles send each other messages going, "Oh, brothers, what, you can't live with them."
Look, it's not what happens to you; it's how you deal with it. And I think he's dealt with everything very
dignified.
well. It has to be said. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, he is in a place called Estonia. Right, you may have gone there for your holidays or not, but apparently it borders Russia. And there is a joint expeditionary force defence there and security summit. That means if Russia decided to flex their muscles and cross the border, there's nothing we could do about it. But anyway, let's go to Catherine Foster. She reports on this.
Well, we're here in Tallinn in Estonia. It's absolutely bitterly cold, and the Prime Minister is continuing on his whirlwind trip, the last, his team tell me, of the year. He's come in for a lot of criticism because you've probably noticed he's been on tons of trips this year. His poll rating has fallen through the floor. He's not, according to most of the British surveyed, doing a brilliant job at the moment, but his team are really keen to talk about why he's doing all this travelling. One of them told me yesterday that, frankly, he'd much rather be back in the UK seeing his children, but they said he's doing this to try to bring jobs and money to the UK. The government have said their number one mission is growth. They're not having much luck at getting it at the moment, so they're turning to partnerships with other countries. So we saw in Norway a whole host of engagements, a visit to a military base, a new green industrial partnership announced with Norway, working on things like carbon capture storage to bring us green energy. They see green tech as a big opportunity. Then on to the Joint Expeditionary Force Summit here in Estonia, talking about the shared challenges that Europe faces since Russia invaded Ukraine, and particularly as Donald Trump is going to be president soon, talking about defence spending. The UK has said they will get it to 2.5%. Estonia here, they say they're already there, and they say the other NATO countries need to follow suit. Now, we're expecting here an announcement on further investment. Estonian startup in defence technology opening an office in London. The PM will want to trumpet that, and more discussions about defence and about security, because it does feel like Europe is really rather different since that invasion of Ukraine. Nothing in terms of safety and security being taken for granted anymore.
In Estonia there for us.
Rachel Reeves plans to hike employers' national insurance, as you know, and it's believed to cost hospices nearly £5 million more every year.
Well, that means that roughly 1 in 5 hospices around the country are already reducing the services they provide, with some warning that they are at risk of closure.
Chief Executive Together for Short Lives, Nick Carroll, joins us now on this morning. Nick, I often think when government implement things like this, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. It's either right to raise this for everyone or it's wrong. And it seems to a lot of people this is wrong.
Morning. Yeah, I think children's hospices is an absolutely impossible situation right now. And I think it's not an underestimation to say it is a crisis point for them. They're facing rising demand for their services. And in the last 2 years, their costs have gone up by 16% because of staff and rising energy costs as well. But their statutory funding has reduced by 30% over that period. Now, that's forced 50% of hospices to be operating at a loss. And if additional funding from the government isn't announced before Christmas, it's likely that that number will rise to 70% of children's hospices operating at a loss. And that's before you even consider the national insurance rises. And like you said, the national insurance rises for children's hospices are going to add another £5 million to their cost base. That's something they just cannot afford to pay back, to pay rent.
I think, Nick, a lot of people will just be shocked that hospices have to voluntarily raise money to support a lot of what they do anyway, and they think this should all be paid for by the NHS, but it's not, is it?
Absolutely not. You know, the figure is 30% on average is provided by the government, by the state, usually through NHS funding or kind of local authority funding. So a really small amount. So after that, it relies on the goodwill of the public and people in the communities doing bake sales, running marathons and jumping out of planes. And currently that situation just isn't sustainable because of the rising costs and the rising demand.
A lot of time in hospices, worked with my local hospice for a time, and they are simultaneously the most tragic and sad places, but also the most incredible. The people who work there are unlike anywhere else, really. What is the reality for you as you're struggling to not only retain the nurses that you've got, but to attract more into the profession with these pressures? What is the reality going to be for those people, very often children? I know that you work with children specifically, in trying to provide them with a dignified death.
I mean, you're absolutely right. It's an impossible situation for them at the moment when they're wondering about whether they're going to be able to support the families and children at the moment, but actually they don't even know if they can keep the lights on. And children's hospices are running at a 14% vacancy rate for key nursing staff at the moment. So, you know, we absolutely need Wes Streeting to make good on his promise. Now, he said he would come forward with a funding solution before Christmas for children's hospices. We need that urgently. It needs to be multi-year. It needs to be distributed centrally so the funds get to the children's hospices quickly. And it absolutely has to rise in line with these cost increases we're seeing. Anything less than that won't be adequate, and we're going to see more and more hospices having to cut frontline staff.
Would it not be just more simple to make the national insurance rise applicable to hospices?
I think an exemption would be great, you know, but whatever mechanic they decide to do, they just need to make sure that there is adequate funding and it is sustainable for the hospices because of the situation they find themselves in.
Well,
you know, it was only, I think, 2 weeks ago we heard Forget Me Not in West Yorkshire beginning to talk about having to cut frontline nursing staff because of £1 million shortfall in their funding.
It's really shocking. Nick, thanks very much for talking to us. Nick Carroll's the Chief Executive of Together for Short Lives. A message very clear from Nick there to the government. And at GB News, we'd love to hear what you think about all of this. Every day we are running our poll of the day. And today we are asking,
should hospices be exempt from the Chancellor's national insurance hike? Have your say, and we'll bring you the results throughout the day.
Yeah, and that final result is in Martin Daubney's show. And if you'd like to cast your vote, you just need to go to gbnews.com/poll.
Let's have a look at some of the other stories you're waking up to on this Tuesday morning. Sarah Sheriff's father and stepmother will be sentenced later today for killing the 10-year-old after years of horrific abuse. Last week they were found guilty of her murder following a trial at the Old Bailey. Her uncle, who lived with them, was convicted of causing or allowing her death.
Residents in parts of Surrey and South London have been told water supplies are starting to return to normal after a major fault at a water company's treatment works. Sutton and East Surrey Water said customers around Sutton, Morden and Epsom could be affected as it carried out essential repairs last night. 2 bottled water stations have been set up at Bourne Hall in Ewell and in Upper High Street car park in Epsom while the issues are resolved.
To America now, and police say at least 2 people are dead, 6 are injured after a 15-year-old girl opened fire in a classroom at a school. This is in Wisconsin. The shooting occurred at Abundant Life Christian School in the state capital of Madison. It's a very small school, only 300 pupils within it. Residents have been asked to avoid the area. Roads are closed near the school.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have shared a rare picture of their two children as part of a series of images for their official Christmas card. Meghan and Harry are shown in the outdoors, about to hug Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet as their son and daughter run away from the camera into their arms. The card also shows 6 photographs of highlights from their year. It's like a picture without a picture.
I don't care.
I do. I'd quite like to see them. You know.
Why do you sit? You sit waiting and thinking. I wonder.
No, I don't sit waiting and thinking. But it's always fun to see the next generation. I mean, it's the King's grandchildren.
Don't
it's nice
care.
to see. I like to see it, but anyway, there's no point. You just see the back of their heads. So none the wiser.
Yeah. So none the wiser about any of that. Christmas cards are very interesting. I think Christmas cards mean a lot. Christmas cards signed, to Eamonn, Isabel, aren't welcome, but a message on those cards, I think that goes a long way. So banks and shops and things will just send you things and they're signed by all the members of the team, waste of time. But if it's saying something like, thanks very much indeed for giving us your business, we really appreciate it, whatever, that means something. But I think just signatures on cards, no good, no good. Dying.
They are dying. Have you sent any cards this Christmas?
Not yet, but I did intend to send cards.
Done a few. Yeah, done a few.
Let's go to Honor Criswick, and she will tell you what the weather picture will be today.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Gradually turning more unsettled from the west with strengthening winds and also some outbreaks of rain moving in, but it is going to be largely mild for the time of year. Fairly settled across the south and southeast, though plenty of cloud and perhaps some quite murky conditions across the southeast to start with some fog around hilly areas, and gradually turning more unsettled from the west as we see outbreaks of rain across parts of Scotland and then later on moving into parts of Northern Ireland and western parts of England and Wales. This could be quite heavy and persistent at times, particularly in the afternoon across northern parts of Scotland, and it is going to turn more and more blustery from the west throughout the day too, but those temperatures generally holding up between the low double digits. As we finish off the day, those outbreaks of rain set to continue, turning heavy at times around western and northern parts of Scotland, and still those blustery winds, particularly around coastal areas. Outbreaks of rain continuing too across Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, and turning very blustery through into the Irish Sea Channel as well. And once again, those outbreaks of rain for western parts of Wales and southwest England, where once again this could turn heavy for a time. Across the far southeast, it will stay dry, but then gradually we'll see more and more of that rain move its way eastwards as we head into overnight, and turning blustery for most across the country, particularly around those western coasts and northern coasts of Scotland too. But with those winds and plenty of cloud and outbreaks of rain, that's going to hold temperatures up around the high single figures. Heading into tomorrow, it's another unsettled day ahead with outbreaks of rain starting to creep in from the west, turning clearer across Scotland, though plenty of blustery showers moving through here. These could turn wintry across high ground. And then once again, we'll see another change from the southwest as further strong winds and heavy outbreaks of rain start to move in here. So gradually turning more and more unsettled, the best of the brightness across the far east. That's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Just when you thought the child murderer Lucy Letby's case was done and dusted, it's not. We'll be giving you the latest on that next.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Jaguar has ditched its growling big cat logo as part of what can only be described as a woke rebrand. The badge that has been used for decades, look at it, beautiful, on the bonnets of luxury cars has been swapped for a curved geometric J badge. They've also released a brand new advert, look at it, for their rebrand, which prompted Elon Musk to ask if the company actually sold cars. I thought this was a wind-up. It's not. It's true. And joining me now to discuss this is the motoring journalist Amanda Stratton. Amanda, what on earth is going on at Jaguar? The car of James Bond, Batman, Arthur Daley has gone off the scale woke. Please make me make sense of it.
The E-Type is an absolutely iconic car, and it's important that people remember that, in fact, in its heyday, Jaguar was an incredibly prestigious brand, more so really than other British brands like Aston Martin, for example. But, you know, people in the industry are left sort of scratching their heads because you need to do something bold, you need to do something that catches people's attention, but you also need to stay true to who you are and what you are, and I'm not sure that this is it.
Amanda, that could be an advert for anything. It could be cat food. It could be Karl Lagerfeld. It could be literally anything apart from a Jag. Well, I mean, honestly, I mean, OK, we're talking about it. So we are talking about it, but we're not talking about it for the right reasons, are we?
And I think if I was going to be speculative here, I would like to think that this is actually all part of a cunning plan to get everybody talking about it. Yeah. So when they do launch the first new car that we're going to see, which, you know, people have been waiting, as I say, since 2001.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, the latest on Lucy Letby, that's in a lot of the newspapers today. Her legal team has said they will be asking the Court of Appeal to review and immediately review all of her convictions because an expert witness has now changed his mind on the cause of death of 3 of the babies.
Well, let's get the thoughts of the health writer and commentator for NHS Managers, Roy Lilly. Good morning to you. Goodness me, I mean, this is a difficult one because let's not forget this is in relation to just a small handful of the children involved of the crimes that she's been convicted of. She's currently serving 15 whole life orders. But this key witness, I mean, it's not an understatement, he really was a key witness. So do you think this stands a chance of being heard again?
Well, I mean, I think from what I understand the legal position to be, it will be unprecedented for the appeal to be reopened. They're not asking for another appeal. They're asking for this appeal to be reopened, which I think I'm right in saying takes lawyers into new territory. But, you know, I think all of us, we have to go to bed at night thinking that the courts work on the basis that people are prosecuted and convicted beyond reasonable doubt. And I don't think we are in that territory of beyond reasonable doubt.
What doubt has been raised?
I think the doubt that's been raised is, as you've described it, a principal witness for the prosecution has said, wait a minute, I think I've got this wrong. There is also, ever since this trial started, there's been controversy over the expert witness. The defence for Lucy Letby never produced really good technical evidence in her defence. And most of the convictions depend on the fact that babies died and she was on a shift.
Yeah, but basically, they thought that she had killed the babies by injecting oxygen bubbles into their bloodstream. And this expert's saying, well, certainly in 3 of these cases, I'm now not sure, although I did say that is how these children died, that this was the case.
exactly. And you've highlighted there that what is the uncertainty in this case. I mean, we've got the Lucy Letby inquiry, the Thirlwell inquiry, which is ongoing now. It's down over Christmas. It resumes, I think, in March. And it will continue to look at the procedures around it. But there have been on social media in other places, certainly in the NHS press and the magazines for managers, doctors, nurses, and so on, a lot of them have raised question marks over the veracity of the technical evidence. These are little tiny babies. I mean, you can hold them in the palm of your hand. They're very fragile and they're very poorly, a lot of them. And the cause of death, a malign cause of death, has been the accusation here. And who knows, it may turn out to be right. But it looks to me anyway, if I was in any way involved in superintending this case, I think I might say, well, let's stop the Thirlwell inquiry. Let's reopen the case and be absolutely sure. Because there are other people involved here. There are the families of the children who've died. And they've seen someone accused, go to prison. They've got some element of closure on that dreadful issue in their lives. But now it's starting to be unpicked. And in fairness absolute fairness to Letby, in fairness to the systems involved as well, I think that it's probably time to have a look at it again.
Gosh, OK. Thank you very much, Roy Lilly, health writer and commentator for NHS Managers. I read in the tabloids over the weekend that Lucy Letby had been spotted in prison. I don't know if they were playing cards or just drinking tea or coffee together with Sarah Sheriff's stepmother, who will be sentenced today for her murder. Make of that what you will, but that was certainly being reported in the last few days.
Time for the Great British British Giveaway competition. Have a go.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Somebody in the Manchester United dressing room is leaking the team news as it is announced to the players, giving the opposition an advantage. Or does it? Paul Coit will tell you after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In North Lanarkshire, the A721 is closed in both directions along Windmill Hill Street in Motherwell after an accident. In Tyne and Wear, the A167 remains closed in both directions over the Gateshead flyover for safety checks, with the road underneath the flyover also closed. In County Durham, the A19 is closed northbound off the A67 at the Craythorne Junction after an accident. The Port of Holyhead remains closed for emergency repairs. In Cambridgeshire, the A47 is closed eastbound along the Parkway off the Dean Parkway in Peterborough for an investigation. In Hertfordshire, the A414 is closed each way between Park Street roundabout and London Coley roundabout near St Albans for an investigation. And in Cornwall, the A30 is closed eastbound from Camborne West to Tolverton after an accident. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Restaurant St Bart's executive head chef Johnny Crowe creates ramen with a British twist, using only the finest UK-sourced produce. As the only restaurant in London to hold both a Michelin star and a green Michelin star, St Bart's emphasises sustainability and the diversity of British ingredients. Johnny joins me now Johnny, congratulations on having these 2 Michelins. How do you get a Michelin green star?
Probably a better question for the inspectors, but I mean, I think it's down to a lot of hard work.
What hoops do you have to go through?
So I think it's working every day on it. Sustainability isn't something that you just achieve and then therefore you have it and you can sort of relax. It's about every day trying to be better, trying to make a restaurant and a business that is overly sustainable.
So what things do you do to make it sustainable?
So one of the main things that we've really tried to do is focusing on British produce, and actually, you know, part of that is about sustainability and food miles. A massive part of it for us was also about sort of helping the British economy and the farming economy and our fisheries as well. But yeah, no, the idea...
You have a lot of farms near St Bart's, which is in the heart of the City of London.
Well, funnily enough, there's an amazing collective called Shrub Provisions who we use a hell of a lot, who work with farmers all around East Sussex. So it makes a difference from flying it in from Kenya or somewhere else like that. But no, like a big part of it was, one, using British produce to cut down on food miles, but also helping sustain our farming industry.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, I can tell you that Paul will be presenting the sport today. That's no secret. But a few secrets at Man United, Paul, are making big back-page headlines today. So the situation is, when the team news is announced to the dressing room, it doesn't stay there.
Well, I smell foul play here. Something funny is going on. So Manchester United played Man City, of course, as you know, at the weekend, and the team was leaked. 2 players were left out.
But this is a regular occurrence. This is not a one-off.
Well, no, this has just happened. So this is not.
This is not just a one-off situation. This is happening week after week.
What, with all the... Well, really, this has only been what's just happened. But there's...
Yes, I know, but it happens every week.
Please bear with me.
This is why it's an issue.
Yes. Marcus Rashford.
Yeah.
And Alejandro Garnacho were left out. So Ruben Amorim, the manager, would want to keep that quiet because you don't want Pep Guardiola, you don't want other people to find out what the team is.
Yeah.
But it was leaked out on social media the night before. So the fact that Marcus Rashford, who was dropped. Now, apparently, at least two players are being questioned about the fact that these 2 other players were dropped from the Manchester United side.
Can you name
could
names?
Possibly the 2 be?
Yeah. Just one more thing.
Yeah. Oh, what's that?
Colombo.
Yeah, you think? Listen, he's probably gone in there. They've probably got someone to work it out, and there's a Colombo type that's going to be.
They need Wagatha Christie.
Just
Forget
one.
Colombo. They need Colleen in there.
Do you think Colleen would try and sort things out?
No problem.
So the social media then came out. Both deny, whoever these 2 are, about the 2 that are being mentioned, have denied being involved. You know, there was a similar one that happened at Bayern Munich about 3 years ago, which is an incredible one. So Julian Nagelsmann, who was the manager of Bayern Munich, he had all the team in. He had all the team in, and he's going, someone is leaking stuff to the press, and I want to know who it is. And it all got very serious. Now, nobody thought the fact that Julian Nagelsmann's girlfriend was a sports journalist who worked for Bild newspaper.
Yeah.
So who do you think possibly was leaking that one? So anyway, there we are.
Meanwhile, the Bournemouth and West Ham defences were leaking goals late on last night.
Very late on. Yeah, very late on. There was a penalty that was disputed by Bournemouth. I thought it was a Stonewall penalty. Arm goes up, hits the hand. Aaron Wan-Bissaka crossed the ball. Tyler Adams, his hand. Penalty was given. Andoni Iraola said that it shouldn't have been given, but it was. There was no problem there. Enes Unal scored a fabulous free kick in the 90th minute, so 1-1 between Bournemouth than West Ham.
Just a wee bit of tennis news. Your friend Emma Raducanu's in many of the papers today.
Yeah.
And she's defending herself and she's saying, right, basically, I'm rubbish. And the reason...
No, she didn't say that, did she?
Well,
she said I'm rubbish.
She's saying the reason she's not playing very well and doesn't win matches is because she's too much commercial sponsorship, sponsors speaking in her ears, and she's distracted.
It was early on. She said that was straight after the US Open, wasn't it? That maybe that she did a few more other jobs and should have concentrated more on her tennis.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is something that you've been saying for quite some time, isn't that true?
Could tie into what I'm thinking, yeah. Thank you, my friend. You go and do another job until 7:20, and then we'll have you back in again.
OK. Just one more thing. Just one more thing.
Just one more thing. Paper review coming up next.
Clem Muldoon and Andy Williams will be here to see what's making the news. But first, if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Unsettled at times across western parts of Europe with some stronger winds and perhaps some outbreaks of rain, but elsewhere it should be largely settled. Fairly breezy around Madeira, though largely dry, just a bit cloudy. Perhaps some thicker cloud moving into parts of Portugal with a risk of some rain, and also fairly breezy around coasts. But elsewhere it's going to be largely settled, lots of dry weather around, though perhaps just a few showers around northern parts of Italy. And the remaining largely settled as we head into the weekend, just a slight dip in temperatures by Saturday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Osama bin Laden issued a fatwa entitled World Front for Combat Against Jews and Crusaders, and President George W. Bush talked of a crusade on terrorism. In 2010, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula sent a parcel bomb to New York. It was addressed to Reginald of Chatillon. The addressee had died at the hands of Saladin in 1187. Those facts suggest that the long history of struggle between Christendom and Islamic caliphates remains relevant, at least to some militant Islamists. That being the case, perhaps we should all understand the past. General Sir Simon Mayle, a former Deputy Chief of the Defence Staff Operations, can be our teacher, particularly if we want to know in gory detail about battles to control Jerusalem, Constantinople, Vienna and the Eastern Mediterranean. His new book is called The House of War. It's an excellent read, which perhaps ought to figure in a national adult curriculum. And he joins me. But let's begin with the word crusade. What was it that drove Christians around Europe to want to cross to the Holy Land and seize Jerusalem?
Context and timing is really important to understand. It's been rather stereotyped as Christian aggression against peace-loving Muslims. The Islamic religion had burst out of the desert in the 7th century with the death of the Prophet Muhammad, and for the next nearly 400 years had Christianity, Christendom, the Christian states absolutely on the back foot. It took the Holy Land, destroyed the Persian Empire, took the North Africa, which was Christian at the time, including Egypt, of course, took Spain all the way into Tours, Charles Martel. 100 years after the death of the Prophet, it expanded in an extraordinary state.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
lovely to see Andy Williams, because I love all his records at this time of the year. And Claire Muldoon, and you should hear her when she starts singing as well. That's a whole other story. Guys, Andy, I want to talk about, there's a story about the European Commission taking on Britain in the European Court of Justice. And I thought this was quite interesting because I was in France last week, and we never ever hear what French people think of Brexit and whatever. And so many people's lives were turned upside down by Brexit, and they can't trade and they can't do business, and they can't do all the things that we complain about doing. But they miss it just as much, it has to be said.
Well, I think a lot of them do. And actually, the amount we import from the EU has gone down by about a third since we left the EU. And that means that countries like France are exporting less, obviously. So it's not... I mean, I personally think it's adversely affected our standing in the world in quite a significant way. And now we're 18 months out from the first renegotiation of the Brexit deal that Boris Johnson did. So I think what you're going to see over the next few months is some quite significant skirmishes between the UK and the EU, because they're going to start out these really hardline positions, as happened originally in the negotiation. So you're probably going to get quite a lot of tension, I think.
So what is the problem? What do they specifically want to sort out, or what is creating a problem at the moment?
Well, I think there's recognition that any deal of that size and magnitude there are compromises made on both sides.
It's farming and food barriers that are a particular priority, isn't it? As well as help for manufacturing with those complex European supply chain issues. Youth exchanges is on the table, and apparently the linking of carbon markets, which is what Rachel Reeves was outlining when she was at that meeting with finance ministers last week. First time a British Chancellor has attended one since Brexit in this sort of attempt at a reset. I was at a lunch last week with about 10 social media influencers who've got sort of around 1 million or so followers and have websites where they're selling lots of goods and have also said that they've not been able to trade with Europe pretty much since Brexit. All of their business now ships to United States and to Australia and other further places. So presumably there's something for us to benefit from this, you know? Does it necessarily mean this is undemocratic if it actually improves GDP and helps us to...
No, it didn't have to be that way. I mean, the start of the Brexit negotiation and the fact that Brexit as an entity was not delivered just goes to show how pernicious and vindictive the Europeans were to try and negotiate with Britain. And then when we look at geographically the rest of Europe at the moment, it's crumbling, it's falling apart. It's falling apart financially, a lot of it. And I think a lot of that is down to trade. And if we did have the common trade that we have now negotiated with America, with Australia, and then bring it back to Europe, then I just don't see the fault, I just don't see the problem. The other issue I have is Northern Ireland, because having family there is really important for me. And this backstop, this invisible bridge nonsense, it's ridiculous. It's stopping a lot of people trying to do their own work and trying to educate themselves and trying to move on to better lives. This is not what the Brexit ideal was about. And I think it's shorthand now, almost as a put-down, pejoratively to people, oh, you're a Brexiteer or you're a Remoaner, you're a Remainer.
But Claire,
we need to move away from that narrative.
I think that's the problem. You say the Brexit ideal. That's exactly what it was. It was an ideal that in practice is not working. It just isn't.
But if we are to make it work, what's in it for the EU? There has to be some concessions, presumably. No. But I mean, if we say to them, right, we want this and we want this and we want this, they'll say, sure, you can have that, but we're going to have to make some concessions. And that's going to upset those people who voted for Brexit. So I suppose it's a debate about...
Well, I don't... Exactly. And what are people's red lines?
Is it the under-30s, allowing free movement for under-30s? Well, for British under-30s, that means they then have access to, 20-plus countries. That's a huge benefit, you could argue, but only one country for Europeans under 30. But that might not be palatable to people.
I think the answer for that in the short term is because there's lots of people who've immigrated here who are grandsons, granddaughters of immigrants. Go and get your Irish passport, go and get your Polish passport through families and get it done that way if you want and travel with that. There are ways round
I'm
everything.
the granddaughter of a Belgian and I wasn't eligible for a Belgian passport yet. My husband's the grandson of an Irishman and has managed to get an Irish passport. Yeah. So there are all these inconsistencies. It's difficult. But anyway, it's a heated debate and I'm sure it's one that perhaps the Prime Minister doesn't necessarily want to take on.
I think we're going to go further there and then further back and further there again. That is negotiation, that is time. And hopefully, there'll be people in charge of the negotiations that will at least have some common sense, please.
Common sense, but also good faith.
And validity and respect,
Yeah,
Andy.
respect. And I think that's the difference with this new government, is that, frankly, I think the leadership of this government do have more respect for the Europeans than their predecessors.
As you
do.
pointed out, Claire, the European Union is a different place.
Yeah.
And as you say, it's in a weaker position.
Yep.
And I think they're probably looking to us thinking, look, we're all having a shocker here.
Yes.
Maybe there's something that we can work out. Fingers crossed that, you know, they can get rid of those huge problems with farming and food, for example, and those barriers. Who knows?
Claire, we're talking later on about this idea of making local councils more responsible for their areas, and they'll see it as a form of devolution. The Times are reporting on this. What have you got to say?
I think it's a horrendous, horrific idea. All the Labour government have to do is look at what's happened to devolved countries. Look what happened to Wales under devolution. Look what's happened to Scotland under devolution. And now they're trying to frog march councils that are underperforming, that are going bankrupt.
Give them more responsibility.
And give them more responsibility.
It never ceases to amaze me that the standard of representative at local council level
is shocking.
Correct.
No? Yeah.
Correct. And people have got to say this. Like, people who can go and get jobs and go and do things, and then there's a lot of people hang about and can't do anything, and they stand for election for local councils, and it leads to a very bad calibre of person there. Why you want to give them more responsibility?
Nail on the head. Absolutely. It's just ridiculous. I don't understand it. You see, count the mayors turning... The only decent mayor, I think, is Andy Burnham. Yeah. I'll just put it out there.
Well, I think he's a future Labour Party leader.
Well, him up her Wes Streeting. I think
you have to be an MP to do that,
I don't think he is. I think he thinks he is, and I think he very transparently thinks he is. I'm not a massive fan of Andy Burnham. Actually. I do think he's done a good job in Manchester, but I think he's all ego. And I think he always has been completely... Well, that's
you look at historical leaders. I just do a lot of history. I read up a lot and I watch a lot of programmes on historical things. And then you look at people and you think, had Churchill got ego? Had JFK got ego? And you look at anybody who's any good, and I would have thought they had to have ego.
Well, certainly to go into politics, I think that's a very fair point. But on this council's point, part of what Labour is trying to achieve here is that, to Eamonn's point about the quality of representation, there are so many levels of local government. You've got in some places, county councils, district councils.
But Andy, are you saying too many levels?
Yeah, too many.
Yeah, of course, totally agree with you. And I was doing an interview on this yesterday, and it's so obvious, and they see it as handing power, and we're empowering you, and we're letting you do all this. No. All I see is more levels of responsibility.
But also, the turnout is so low for local elections that actually people, they're going to get more power, but people don't even turn up to vote. So it's kind of a weird one, I think.
Well, I think it's having fewer levels of government that have more power. And actually, overall, I don't think that's a bad thing. At the moment, you have this fragmented system. Nobody really knows who to go to for what. But you're absolutely right. The turnout in local elections is, 10% in most cases, if that?
Look, what about how you're represented locally, wherever it is around the country? Let us know what you think about more power being handed to your local representatives, which I must say, on paper, sounds good. But is it in practice? Let us know this morning. Get in touch and have your say.
Let's talk about Kemi Badenoch. She says a flat rate system would be very attractive. This is in the Times. This comes just days after she did an interview here with Camilla Tominey saying that she's got years till she needs to present an argument to the country and didn't want to be rushed into her solutions, and we need to learn the lessons of why we lost so badly. But this sounds like a pretty significant tax policy. So what's she saying?
Well, you just hit upon a classic problem with Kemi Badenoch, which is she has no filter. You know, she's just not very... She's not very controlled in her message. And she just said, apropos of nothing yesterday, that maybe in the future a flat rate of tax, so everyone paying the same proportion of their income in tax, would be a very attractive idea. Now, it might be on paper, but the reality is that, A, there's no way in a million years we could afford that. And even if Labour achieve every single goal they've set out, which seems unlikely, we still won't be able to afford it in 5 years. Just explain that. So somebody who's on a minimum wage working as a barista in a coffee shop would be paying the same rate of tax as somebody who's a CEO of a multinational company? Yeah, so if you earn £15,000 a year, you'd pay 20% tax on that. If you earned $3 million a year, you'd pay 20% tax on that. Obviously, most developed countries have a system where, broadly, the more you earn, the high proportion, exactly, you pay in tax. And there are very few countries that have a flat rate of tax. Romania, Hungary, Bolivia, Turkmenistan. There's a good reason why developed, serious economies don't do this.
Yeah. But there's too much tax. There's too much tax on too many things. I always think value-added tax. What is that? What is the point of that? National insurance. National insurance does not go to the health service. So why do we have that set?
Well, there's a massive case for simplifying the tax system.
Correct, my friend. Thank you. We're going to simplify this programme, and we will be back. Here's the weather update, and we'll be back after this top of the hour.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Gradually turning more unsettled from the west with strengthening winds and also some outbreaks of rain moving in, but it is going to be largely mild for the time of year. Fairly settled across the south and southeast, though plenty of cloud and perhaps some quite murky conditions across the southeast to start with some fog around hilly areas, and gradually turning more unsettled from the west as we see outbreaks of rain across parts of Scotland and then later on moving into parts of Northern Ireland and western parts of England and Wales. This could be quite heavy and persistent at times, particularly in the afternoon across northern parts of Scotland, and it is going to turn more and more blustery from the west throughout the day too, but those temperatures generally holding up between the low double digits. As we finish off the day, those outbreaks of rain set to continue, turning heavy at times around western and northern parts of Scotland, and still those blustery winds, particularly around coastal areas. Outbreaks of rain continuing too across Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, and turning very blustery through into the Irish Sea Channel as well. And once again, those outbreaks of rain for western parts of Wales and southwest England, where once again this could turn heavy for a time. Across the far southeast, it will stay dry, but then gradually we'll see more and more of that rain move its way eastwards as we head into overnight, and turning blustery for most across the country, particularly around those western coasts and northern coasts of Scotland too. But with those winds and plenty of cloud and outbreaks of rain, that's going to hold temperatures up around the high single figures. Heading into tomorrow, it's another unsettled day ahead with outbreaks of rain starting to creep in from the west, turning clearer across Scotland, though plenty of blustery showers moving through here. These could turn wintry across high ground. And then once again, we'll see another change from the southwest as further strong winds and heavy outbreaks of rain start to move in here. So gradually turning more and more unsettled, the best of the brightness across the far east. That's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In North Lanarkshire, the A721 is closed in both directions along Windmill Hill Street in Motherwell after an accident. In Tyne and Wear, the A167 remains closed each way over the Gateshead flyover for safety checks, with the road underneath the flyover also closed. In County Durham, the A19 is closed northbound off the A67 at Craythorne after an accident. There's also a lane closed southbound. The Port of Holyhead remains closed for repairs. In Cambridgeshire, the A47 is closed in both directions along the Soap Parkway and Peterborough for an investigation. Eastbound's closed from junction 15 at Dean Parkway to 16 at Bretton Gate, and westbound's closed from junction 18 for the A15 Lincoln Road to 16 at Bretton Gate. On the M1 in Bedfordshire, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident between junctions 12 and 13 towards Bedford, and in Cornwall, the A30 is closed eastbound at Camborne after an accident last night.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. The Prime Minister's under pressure to take China more seriously.
Well, that is after this alleged Chinese spy, Yang Tengbo, was unmasked by the courts. And it reveals a web of influence amongst the British establishment.
And it comes as Prince Andrew is at the centre of the scandal, confirms he won't be attending the Royals' Christmas at Sandringham.
Prime Minister will visit troops serving on Estonia's border with Russia in a push to support funding for Ukraine. Catherine Foster with the latest.
Welcome to Tallinn, the bitterly cold capital of Estonia. The Prime Minister is here following his trip to Norway. He's come in for a lot of criticism about all these foreign trips. I'll bring you the details of what he's up to shortly.
Lucy Letby's lawyer has said they'll be asking the Court of Appeal to immediately review all of her convictions because an expert witness has now changed his mind on the cause of death of 3 babies.
Brexit betrayal. Brussels takes Britain to court over breaking the terms of the Brexit deal, hindering the PM's reset with Europe. Your views welcome.
Rachel Reeves's national insurance hikes will cost children's hospices nearly £5 million more every year. There are now urgent calls for action to stop services being cut.
It's the time of the year when family feuds are put aside for festive cheer. Good luck with that. So we are asking, should families reconcile at Christmas?
And happy holidays. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex give a rare glimpse of their children in their annual Christmas card.
And in sport, 2 goals in the last 2 minutes, settle a 1-1 draw between Bournemouth and West Ham. England get thumped by New Zealand in the 3rd test, and as Sir Mark Cavendish is cruelly ignored in tonight's Sports Personality of the Year shortlist, he'll now be given a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Hello there, good morning. A dry but rather cloudy start and turning wet and windy from the west. I'll be here later with all the details.
Morning, good to see you. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast.
You know, all that talk about families
Reuniting,
being
reconciling.
friendly to each other at Christmas and all that nonsense. Alcohol's a great thing because it'll either make everything seem happier than it is, or it'll cause problems.
It improves it before it ruins it again.
But I'm thinking, remember in the First World War, you'd remember this.
I do remember. I remember when I was playing football with the Germans across the lines. I remember
that's
that.
Exactly
Is that what you were going to say?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So there we were, Christmas, and somebody kicked a football out into no man's land.
That's right.
And there was a football match between the British troops and the Germans. And they all shook hands at the end of it and then went back to killing each other.
It actually did happen, though, didn't it? Actually did happen.
It did happen, yes, true.
Because Paul McCartney's Pipes of Peace video. Oh. Should you remember that? That was, did that as well.
But I didn't know that was in tribute to that. Yeah.
And then, as midnight into Boxing Day, the whistle blew. Literally, everybody went back to the trenches, back to where we were.
Do you know what's a brilliant film? War Horse. Brilliant stage production. Have you ever seen it?
I never saw it, but Her Majesty the Queen snuck in to see it famously, didn't she, a number of times?
So powerful, absolutely so powerful. But the reason I brought that up was that a lot of that was about the trenches and the horses in the trenches and the animals which died during the war. But
so I know this is bad, but I love films, especially war films and history. I'm a history nut. But I didn't see War Horse because I knew I would be more upset.
Yeah.
It would be animals that would be killed.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly.
Than actually humans. I know that's crazy.
That is crazy.
But it would upset me more if I saw the film of that.
It's not crazy at all, because most people aren't very nice. But it's true. Animals are much nicer than people.
It's like the innocence of the animals, you know?
Yeah.
I know I sound like...
They're all pretty tragic, like trench warfare.
Well, of course it is. We know that.
I'll go with the humans, but...
I absolutely agree, but I would be more upset.
You would say, you're an evil human, you're a horrible human, but you should live, and that beautiful horse should die.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well,
I'm just saying I would have more sympathy with humanity than animals first, which is the natural order, isn't it?
Well, I wouldn't. No way. Not in a million years. And I know I'm right. Anyway.
Always.
See you later, alligator.
Thank you very much.
Right, let's turn our attention to spy matters, shall we? The Prime Minister under pressure to declare China a national security threat.
Well, that's after an alleged Chinese spy with links to Prince Andrew has been publicly named. He is 50-year-old Yang Tengbo, following the lifting of an anonymity order.
Well, Mr Yang's also issued a statement calling the reports entirely untrue and says he loves the UK as his second home and would never do anything to undermine it. Let's get the thoughts of the former political editor at LBC, Theo Usherwood. Good morning to you. Remember that catchy phrase that Rishi Sunak had, epoch-defining threat? What's happened to that?
Well, it's a very good question, because China was, of course, designated, it was in, for MI5, and on their list it was in the same bracket as Iran, as North Korea. And then when Sir Ken McCallum gave his threat update, he took a different tone. This was back in October. He took a different tone towards China, saying that obviously there were challenges and that the security services wanted to provide advice to businesses when doing business, when involving themselves in China. Keir Starmer, of course, was the first Prime Minister when he met Xi Jinping a few weeks ago to meet the Chinese Premier in 6 years. And there had been hope that there could be, if you like, a thawing of relations. But the extent to which China is adopting this whole-of-state approach to inveigling itself, whether it's with business, whether it's with MPs or royalty in the case of Prince Andrew, there is a real concern, especially amongst those hawks. And the Conservative backbenchers have been particularly strong on this. We're thinking of the likes of Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, former Conservative leader Tom Tugendhat, the former Security Minister, about the threat to which China poses to this country. Not necessarily straight away, but if you think around, say, the 5G network, what power we're giving China when it comes to building our infrastructure.
China has this economic power and this technology power, which we don't have. Try and make out we're innocent parties in all of this. We will spy as much on China as China spies on us. I read a brilliant story yesterday about the American Education Department, who, after the Second World War, were presented this crest, this American eagle, whatever, by Russia. And it hung up in this office for 13 years. And it was given by a little kid and all the rest. But inside it was a bug which picked up everything that was said in the office and transmitted it all back. So this stuff goes on. Russia will always spy on us. China will always spy on us. America will always spy on us. So this is what I was saying to you about people not being very nice. That's what they do at that level. You're innocent, you're naive if you actually believe it doesn't.
Well, we do spying in reverse as well. Of course, that's just, the way it works. But the reality is, this infiltration is on another level, and there seems to be a dilemma for the Prime Minister between the economic harm it could cause. You were saying HSBC have come out and said this special register that Tom Tugendhat is really keen to roll out and get underway would actually really hurt us economically.
This was passed in the National Security Act. It was one of the last pieces of legislation the Conservatives passed. And as part of that, there is going to be a new register where you would have firms, individuals would have to register whether they are linked to a foreign country and whether they are acting for a foreign country. And there is a normal list, and you'd have that for countries that have good relations. And then there's an enhanced tier where you would have the likes of Iran or Russia, obviously. But what about China? Do we place China on that list? And as you were saying, HSBC has real concerns that actually if China was to be placed on that list, it could do real harm to our business dealings, their business dealings in China. And Keir Starmer is understood to be fairly resistant to placing China on that list because Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is due to travel to Beijing in January, and she's trying to drum up closer economic ties, and it becomes a very thorny issue in those meetings between ministers and officials. If on the one hand we're saying, please, let's do business, and on the other hand are saying, well, actually, you're a hostile state and we're going to put up this bureaucracy that's actually going to make your life more difficult if you want to do business in the UK. And that's the line the Prime Minister and the Chancellor has got to tread, and it's a very difficult one.
They are going to do business, you know, because it suits both of them. But they are still going to spy on each other.
Yes, I think, but there is concern, and Tom Tugendhat and Ian Duncan-Smith and there are others and we've seen it with this story here, because Yang Tengbo wasn't just a friend of the Duke of York. This man was running Pitch for the Palace, which is the Prince Andrew's actual scheme to get more entrepreneurs into this country, investing in this country. He was the founder. He was running it in China for Prince Andrew. This is on another level, and I think there's real concern that if China becomes so, and its state apparatus becomes so involved in Britain, that actually it would give the Chinese potentially huge power should we actually find ourselves in a situation where actually Britain and China, the relations deteriorate and suddenly they have a huge amount of power in the UK.
Theo,
I'm just going to pick your brains before we fully let you go, because we've just had those breaking figures released from the Office for National Statistics, which we were expecting this morning on unemployment and on average earnings. So in the 3 months to October, unemployment remained unchanged at 4.3%, and average earnings rose to 5.2%. And when you take into account inflation, CPI, it's 3% higher. So what will the government make of those?
They will see that as good news, because if people are getting better off, if earnings are outstripping inflation, then people in real terms are going to be getting better off. But I think there's still a significant amount of concern right across government about the state of the economy, securing economic growth and the challenges ahead.
This is pre-budget, of course, as well, isn't it? So let's wait and see to the next round. For now, Theo, thank you.
Who have we got now? Richard Fitzwilliam.
We're going to talk to Richard Fitzwilliams now. He's
more about
royal
China
commentator, to talk a bit about Prince Andrew and the fact that he has excused himself, sparing the King some blushes in relation to this latest scandal. He's nipped it in the bud, at least quickly this time.
Nipped it where?
Nipped it in the bud, not the bun.
All right.
Well, I think that, quite frankly, this was inevitable. I mean, you simply, after the gruesomely embarrassing revelations of the past week, I mean, you simply couldn't have had Andrew and Sarah Ferguson at Sandringham, and certainly not at the walk to St Mary Magdalene's Church, which goes worldwide. But the question also is, there's the extended family lunch, which King Charles is hosting at Buckingham Palace on Thursday. Now, it is, again, something we must hope that Andrew recuses himself from that. I mean, it's simply been one disaster after another. And, of course, this last week, I mean, the fact that we know that Yang Tengbo, the alleged Chinese spy, was, in fact, running Pitch at Palace in China for Andrew, and how close they got. We saw the pretty embarrassing extracts from documents from Andrew's senior advisor. I mean, it's essentially, I think it boils down to what in the Mail is reported. The new humiliation means Andrew may never appear in public with the royals again, bar perhaps wedding.
Richard, but could it set a new trend? Could you mean, you know, he doesn't go this year, he'll probably have a lovely time sitting watching a movie and his big brother on television at 3 o'clock and all that sort of thing. and Christmas is Christmas, and they'll get through it. Very good. Could Edward next year say, do you know what, Charles, I'll not go either. We're going to have a better time on our own, whatever. A lot of people may just be looking at a lovely excuse to get out of all this.
Well, of course, I mean, if you want to be with over 40 people, remember it is high profile, remember it goes round the world, and remember also at 3 o'clock, if Andrew doesn't watch the King's speech, I would be very, very surprised. But nonetheless, not everybody relishes family gatherings. That's absolutely true. And we can't really predict what's going to happen in future years. But so far as Andrew's concerned, I mean, it's impossible to see anything other than some form of job running the royal estates, and he doesn't seem interested in that. And there are reports that he might be looking at possibly going to the Gulf, but again, since he's centred at Royal Lodge, and we don't know how he gets the money to afford the renovations that are required under the lease there. And of course, there's the issue of security. It's no longer being handled by the King. So one wonders what's going to happen so far as he's concerned, because he's done nothing wrong. He denies, so he says, and he denies all the charges that have been levelled against him over the years. But it's absolutely impossible to look at this terrifying list of so-called friends that he's had and look. If you look back, and you then, of course, remember the Newsnight interview and so forth, Sarah Ferguson, I see the spin is that she's persuaded him, and we know, and there's a great deal of sympathy for her, because, of course, she has been so ill recently. But there's no doubt at all the Chinese propaganda network will have observed her problems with debts, and also the fact that she's tried to sell access to Andrew in a spin in 2010, this sort of thing. So if you're being targeted, Andrew had stepped down as senior representative of British trade because of his friendship with Epstein, but the facts were that in 2014, which apparently was when the link with Yang Tenbo began, according to reports now, there would always have been the possibility that access could lead to influence, and there would always have been a possibility then that Andrew might have been rehabilitated in some way.
OK. Richard Fitzwilliams, thanks very much indeed. Royal commentator with his thoughts on all of that this morning. Thank you.
Prime Minister will meet with the Estonian Prime Minister today and other world leaders. This is at a joint expeditionary force defence and security summit.
Let's get the thoughts of our political correspondent Catherine Forster now, who's travelling with the Prime Minister and has the latest.
Well, we're here in Tallinn in Estonia. It's absolutely bitterly cold, and the Prime Minister is continuing on his whirlwind trip, the last, his team tell me, of the year. He's come in for a lot of criticism because you've probably noticed he's been on tons of trips this year. His poll rating has fallen through the floor. He's not, according to most of the British surveyed, doing a brilliant job at the moment, but his team are really keen to talk about why he's doing all this travelling. One of them told me yesterday that, frankly, he'd much rather be back in the UK seeing his children, but they said he's doing this to try to bring jobs and money to the UK. The government have said their number one mission is growth. They're not having much luck at getting it at the moment, so they're turning to partnerships with other countries. So we saw in Norway a whole host of engagements, a visit to a military base, a new green industrial partnership announced with Norway, working on things like carbon capture storage to bring us green energy. They see green tech as a big opportunity. Then on to the Joint Expeditionary Force Summit here in Estonia, talking about the shared challenges that Europe faces since Russia invaded Ukraine, and particularly as Donald Trump is going to be president soon, talking about defence spending. The UK has said they will get it to 2.5%. Estonia here, they say they're already there, and they say the other NATO countries need to follow suit. Now, we're expecting here an announcement on further investment, Estonian startup in defence technology opening an office in London. The PM will want to trumpet that, and more discussions about defence and about security, because it does feel like Europe is really rather different since that invasion of Ukraine. Nothing in terms of safety and security being taken for granted anymore.
Catherine Foster, other news making it into the newsroom today on this Tuesday morning. We can report a bomb hidden in an electric scooter. This is an assassination attempt on a senior Russian general, and it worked. That's according to Russia's investigative committee. He's Lieutenant General Igor Kirtit, who is chief of Russia's nuclear, biological and chemical protection troops, and he was killed outside an apartment building today. Now, this man's in charge of Russia's radioactive, chemical and biological defence troops. They're known as RKHBZ. These are special forces, and they operate under conditions of radioactive, chemical and biological contamination. And already Ukrainian prosecutors have charged him in absentia with alleged use of banned chemical weapons in Ukraine.
And a reminder of the other breaking story this hour. Within the past few moments, the UK's unemployment rate has remained unchanged at 4.3% in the 3 months to October.
Sarah Sharif's father and stepmother will be sentenced later today for killing the 10-year-old, murdering the 10-year-old after years of horrific abuse. Last week they were found guilty of her murder following a trial at the Old Bailey. Her uncle, who lived with them, was convicted of causing or allowing her death.
Police in the United States say at least 2 people are dead and 6 were injured after a 15-year-old girl opened fire in a classroom at a school in Wisconsin. The shooting occurred at Abundant Life Christian School in the state capital of Madison. Residents have been asked to avoid the area and roads are closed near to the school.
There's another awful situation in America that we just have to take for granted.
I know. Who'd be a teacher? Putting yourself in harm's way in that way, and for the children to have to do these shooter practices all the time. Why does it always happen in schools?
Well, it's happened again. It's a small school, very small, 350 pupils, and they range from 4 years of age to 18 years of age. It is a Christian school, and unusually, a girl has used the assault weapon involved in all of this. More details on that as we get it. Here's the weather.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Gradually turning more unsettled from the west with strengthening winds and also some outbreaks of rain moving in, but it is going to be largely mild for the time of year. Fairly settled across the south and southeast, though plenty of cloud and perhaps some quite murky conditions across the southeast to start with some fog around hilly areas, and gradually turning more unsettled from the west as we see outbreaks of rain across parts of Scotland and then later on moving into parts of Northern Ireland and western parts of England and Wales. This could be quite heavy and persistent at times, particularly in the afternoon across northern parts of Scotland, and it is going to turn more and more blustery from the west throughout the day too, but those temperatures generally holding up between the low double digits. As we finish off the day, those outbreaks of rain set to continue, turning heavy at times around western and northern parts of Scotland, and still those blustery winds, particularly around coastal areas. Outbreaks of rain continuing too across Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, and turning very blustery through into the Irish Sea Channel as well. And once again, those outbreaks of rain for western parts of Wales and southwest England, where once again this could turn heavy for a time. Across the far southeast, it will stay dry, but then gradually we'll see more and more of that rain move its way eastwards as we head into overnight, and turning blustery for most across the country, particularly around those western coasts and northern coasts of Scotland too. But with those winds and plenty of cloud and outbreaks of rain, that's going to hold temperatures up around the high single figures. Heading into tomorrow, it's another unsettled day ahead with outbreaks of rain starting to creep in from the west, turning clearer across Scotland, though plenty of blustery showers moving through here. These could turn wintry across high ground. And then once again, we'll see another change from the southwest as further strong winds and heavy outbreaks of rain start to move in here. So gradually turning more and more unsettled, the best of the brightness across the far east. That's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Right, pay attention. The Great British Giveaway, 50 grand, and it could be yours.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Still to come, 'tis the season of goodwill. Peace and love to all, or not? When it comes to awkward family members, we'll be debating that in just a second.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
This is Miss Universe fans hailing the end of wokeness and crediting the Trump effect after a biological woman, there's still some of them around apparently, has won the 2024 crown. She's Miss Denmark, because obviously the last decade, you know, it's just been a beast transgender smurfs from Papua New Guinea. They're the only people allowed to win any beauty contest, you know what I mean? You're not allowed to have any.
Some of the trans women have won these. You definitely wouldn't say no.
Honestly, I've seen but I've seen some of them that didn't, and some that were clearly just there out of
Have there been more than one trans woman? Has one I didn't realise this.
Yeah.
Okay,
I've got a chart at home. This one isn't trans. Victoria Thielvig, 21 of Denmark. Everything about that description says attractive.
Nazi. Okay, yeah. I have seen pictures of her. She is very attractive.
Yes.
She is.
Yes.
I don't know exactly how to put it, but she is kind of not retro or vintage or so. She's quite an old-fashioned notion of beauty, just absolutely ice blue eyes, no absolutely extraordinary, clear skin and gorgeous blonde hair. I mean, it's absolutely kind of mid-70s,
apparently the sanity's returned to the beauty pageant industry, so they can get back to, sexualising 4-year-olds and promoting anorexia like they used to. So
there is that,
She will earn an estimated $250,000 annual salary working full-time as Miss Universe, and will live in a luxurious New York City apartment as she carries out her duties, which involve glass coffee tables and rich Saudi businessmen.
Glass coffee tables. And visiting other planets and solar systems and constellations, I would imagine, in Miss Universe.
Being concerned about animals.
Yes, absolutely, and wanting to bring about world peace. I miss those days.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So, is Christmas a time for celebration and joy, or is that a thing of the past? What if you can't stand your family? What do you think?
I don't like people, so I don't really care. I don't want anybody visiting me. Don't
Even
want
family?
Yeah. I'll have family.
Right.
I can sit with my children. My brothers, I could sit with my brothers,
Yeah.
but then they would annoy me very quickly. But they'd be very good company.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Is life too short to spend your whole life avoiding people that you share blood with? Is Christmas the perfect time to bury the hatchet, perhaps mend those relationships, find the good in people again? Or should we just carry on hating? Right. Commentator and actress Debbie Arnold and author and commentator Lewis Oakley with opposing views in all of this.
Debbie, you couldn't have any enemies. Surely you'd want to mix with everybody.
No, but families are weird, aren't they?
They're tricky, yeah.
Yeah, they are weird. And I love being with my family at Christmas. And there's only once that I haven't been, and it nearly broke my heart. And I think people should forget what's the point of being angry with somebody or mean or nasty. Life is too short. You've just got to let it go and have some fun.
Well, what do you think, Lewis?
No, I'm sorry. I think that, Christmas is a happy time if it can be, but you can't be forgiving bad behaviour just because it's a certain time of year. And to me, it's almost weaponising. It's like, well, you've got it's Christmas. Well, no, you've done what you've done. You've got the consequences of what you've done. If you're no longer invited to Christmas or there's those tensions, you need to own that. You can't pretend that just because it's a certain time of year that the standards
But, Lewis, you sound like you're talking about a serious, offence that's been caused, whether there's been something that, a big upset that, you should never forgive. But if we're talking about, squabbling over the will or, perhaps annoyed over them always hosting and you're not, silly little sibling fight.
I don't think squabbling over will is a silly...
Well, it depends, doesn't it? If it's like, OK, I don't know.
Oh, you have the house and...
OK, but, I mean, it's just material things, isn't it? But blood is thicker than water. I mean, if it's just a silly squabble, is what I'm trying to say, should you try and bury the hatchet? If not now, then when?
But it's... no, because I think the thing is, it's about what it means to the individual. So whether it is a silly squabble, if it's annoyed you and if it's like this is a pattern of behaviour, and I know a lot of this comes from Prince Andrew, where it's like, just stop creating trouble for us. And I think, there is also this idea of like, oh, we'll put it to the side just because it's Christmas. No, the process of forgiving someone takes time. You can't shortcut it. At first, you need to tell them this is what you've done that irritated me. Then sometimes you have to go for a period of I just can't speak to them, I just can't look at them. And then maybe work on reconciliation.
I'm really glad that I don't have you as part of my family. That's a horrible way to think.
No, that's a natural... That's what most people do.
I come from a very different background, I'm sure, than you do. And because my mother's parents were murdered in Auschwitz, and I have no other family but my children, there is no way I would ever, ever, ever put any pressure on anybody else but my children. They've got to be with me. They've got to. And I don't care what's happened between them in our family. We've only got each other, and it's vitally important for all this tittle-tattle that's going on. You've got to realise the big picture, which is your family. At the end of the day, they're the only people that are going to look after you. Well, mine are anyway.
Not everyone has that kind of family. That's lovely that you have that kind of family, and I have a great family too. But, we can have tensions, and sometimes, you just can't speak to someone for a little while. And I think with what you've just said there, so there's nothing your family can do. They can go around doing whatever they want. There's never going to be any consequences. Sometimes you have to say, look, if we're going to be a family,
it's
there
Christmas.
has to be a certain level of standards.
It's not about consequences. Of course there are consequences, and you have to deal with them. But sometimes, and Christmas is just a day, But sometimes there's just a day where you've got to say, actually, guys, come on, let's come together. Let's try and sort this out and have some fun and have a lovely day. Children around. It's a nice thing to do.
Other people feel uncomfortable. If you're there pressuring someone, you've got to forgive them, and they're not ready to forgive them. That's not good for them either.
Well, then they won't come. But the fact is that they should be ready to forgive.
Yeah.
I think holding on to things anyway.
A few glasses of sherry and everybody will forget everything. If I was Prince Andrew, I would be saying, yes, result. I don't have to sit with that boring lot in Sandringham. This is great. Can do what we want.
And besides, Eamonn, they don't. You haven't said I'm your favourite today yet.
Which is?
Oh, sorry, you haven't said I'm your favourite today.
Oh, have I not? Oh, but you take that for granted. You and I would have a very good Christmas together, that sort of thing. As a matter of fact, I might come round to your house. That might be the best idea of all.
Well, please, you're always welcome. Everybody's welcome. Okay. But I think with the royals, they don't celebrate Christmas on Christmas Day, do they? They do it on Christmas Eve.
You're right.
There you go.
You're right. Debbie, we've got to go because we've got other chats to have. But thank you, Lewis. Thank you very much indeed.
You can come over.
Oh, she's still going. Sorry, Debbie. We've got to interject because the Shadow Minister for Housing and Local Government standing by, that is David Simmons. He joins us from Westminster. Good morning to you. Can we start with our top story this morning?
Good morning.
The unmasking of this spy. How much of a threat do you think China is to us? And do you think that the Prime Minister's taking the correct course of action, as the Mail's describing it, in sucking up to the Chinese?
After yesterday's events, the Prime Minister needs to explain to Parliament and the country that given the government's decision to delay our scheme for foreign interest registration, what steps he's going to take to make sure that we are safe from the interference of foreign spies. And clearly what's happened has raised a great deal of concern. We need to ensure that our industrial base is secure, and we need to make sure that we have appropriate measures to ensure transparency. We introduced those in government. This government, when it took office, decided to delay the implementation of those, and we need to know what they're going to do as next steps to ensure that we have a safe and secure relationship with China.
Under the Conservatives, there were huge fluctuations in the sort of warmth towards Beijing based on what a difficult dilemma it is. And we're understanding from the government that this FERS scheme that you guys say was ready to go as you were leaving office in the summer has actually been criticised by the likes of HSBC, who've come out and said, actually, if we did put China on some sort of enhanced risk list, actually that would be terrible for our economy, terrible for business. And that's the difficult line that the Prime Minister has to walk, isn't it?
The UK and China have a very close trading relationship, and it goes back a very, very long time. And it includes things like the agreements we have in place around the status of people in Hong Kong, where we know that we've needed to intervene when in government because the Chinese government have taken decisions which have harmed the interests of the UK and of the people for whom we have that responsibility. So that relationship has had its ups and downs over the years. The key thing now is that the government is looking for a reset in that relationship with China. That's a reasonable thing for them to do, but they need to be able to demonstrate to the British people, to our businesses, that they have their interests at heart. And at the moment, there seems to be a bit of a black hole in the information that's coming out of government. And that's why we're challenging them on that. We're saying, if you don't wish to proceed with a scheme like FERS, which brings transparency by ensuring that anybody who's acting as an agent of another government in our country has to register that fact so everybody knows what they're here for and what they're here to do, then we need to know what the alternative measures are that this government would bring forward.
Okay. Can I get your reaction to the breaking news this hour from the Office for National Statistics, which shows that actually unemployment is unchanged at 4.3% in the 3 months to October, and also it looks like good news, doesn't it, on average earnings? They've risen to 5.2%, but if you take into account inflation, it's around 3%. So people will be feeling better off under Labour in the 3 months to October.
Well, it's good news that those figures have come out, and clearly we know the economy's been on an improving trajectory for some time. We've had several years of growth in real wages. One of the things we were most proud of in government was the fact that we created on average 800 new jobs per day for every day that the Conservative government was in office. When we left, youth unemployment was half what it was in 2010. But we know that the warning signs from businesses that are flagged that in the new year, as the Christmas rush begins to recede, that they're looking at hiring freezes, they're looking at real tightness around both wage increases, potentially wage reductions for new jobs that are coming forward. All of those will begin to have a significant impact on people's livelihoods, and we need to make sure that the very serious negative impact of the budget and the other tax rises, which we know Labour are coming back for, are not going to be having a real negative effect on people's living standards in the coming years.
David, thank you very much indeed. David Simmons is the Minister for Housing, Communities and something else that I can't see there, local government. So it is. Coming up, we're going to do, goodness knows what we're going to do. But anyway, we're back with certainly at least the newspapers right after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In County Durham, the A19 is closed northbound off the A67 at the Craythorne junction after an accident. There are delays with a lane closure on the southbound side too. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, 3 out of 4 lanes are closed anti-clockwise after an accident between junctions 13 and 12 from Worsley to the Eccles interchange. There are queues for around 5.5 miles towards there from junction 17 at Prestwich. The port of Holyhead remains closed because of storm damage, with the sailings between Holyhead and Dublin suspended. In Cambridgeshire, the A47 is closed eastbound on the Soap Parkway in Peterborough for an investigation. On the M25 in Essex, there's a lane closed anti-clockwise after an accident just before the Honsdale Tunnel between junctions 26 and 25 from Waltham Abbey to the A10 causing queues. And in Cornwall, the A30 is closed eastbound at Camborne after an accident last night.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Maria, potholes, the bane of everybody that uses the road, whether you're a car driver or a cyclist. As a cyclist, are even worse. How have we got into this situation where our roads are in such a bad state?
Well, part of it is to do with actually our climate. In somewhere like, say, Sweden, like the snow will fall on the ground, it will stay there for months. Whereas here we've got what's called a freeze-thaw climate, where the water comes down, then we might have a cold snap and it freezes, and the water within the pothole will then expand and make the pothole bigger. Then we might have a mild spell, and then that process repeats. So, we do actually need extra funding to acknowledge the fact that, we just live in a climate where we're sort of particularly vulnerable to potholes.
Why? I mean, the fact that this happens, these weather conditions happen, is no great surprise to anybody. Why has the problem been ignored for so long?
I think what's happened is we've had short-term funding. So it's like, oh, there's a pothole, let's patch it up. Oh, there's another one, let's patch it up. But the patches aren't actually really that strong, so then they break down again. So, really what we need is to have roads completely resurfaced, and then they'll just be pothole-free for a very long time. And that really is how funding should be. That's the direction funding should go in, as opposed to just sort of dribs and drabs here and there.
Do you think this government are going to be good for the motorist, or is there indeed a war on the motorist still?
The different parties come in and they've all got different policies that they wheel out, then they cancel the policies, and then there's so much lack of transparency. Like, for example, with the pothole issue, sometimes the government, whichever government is in office, will do some big showboating about how they're going to give X amount of potholes, and you still think that sounds really good.
GB News, the People's Channel.
During the countdown to Christmas Day, we're hearing from church ministers. Each day, they have a special message for you to celebrate the holy season.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 17.
Hello, I'm Reverend Mike Milmine and welcome to St Leonard's Church in Denton, where I'm priest in charge. Many of our favourite stories begin like this. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away. But the Christmas story begins very differently. St Luke's account starts like this. In the reign of Caesar Augustus, while Quirinius was governor of Syria, real people, real dates, the Christmas story is anchored in human history. It's tempting to cast the Christmas story as a lesson-filled fable full of moral nuggets that we can extract in the way that we do with a fairy tale. But the Christmas story won't allow itself to be read in that way. The truth and endurance of the Christmas story lies in the fact that the events really did happen. The mere fact that it's 2024 is testimony to that. The decisive moment in which God breaks into human history, and nothing will ever be the same again.
If you like those special Advent messages as Christmas approaches, check out our website, gbnews.com, and you can find them all there, /Advent.
We're joined now by Andy Williams and Claire Muldoon. They've got the stories in the papers today. Claire, what do you make of this Chinese situation and the fact everybody's getting so upset of this spy pal of Prince Andrew?
I think everyone has got a right to be angered with Prince Andrew's behaviour. I really do. I think it's just deplorable. He thinks he's above the law, and he thinks he's got a very sinister angle to it, I think, because he just doesn't care. I mean, there's a man could he not sweat, or he did sweat in Pizza Express or something like that?
Why are you holding him responsible when he's simply fronting an organisation that's supposed to reach out to countries like China for more business?
Because of funding. And his mother had to bail him out of the Victoria Giuffre. He's now saying he doesn't need to move out of the Royal Lodge in Windsor because he can pay for it. Well, being a public figure, being a member of the royal family, you do have a level of scrutiny and you do have a level of accountability as to where your money comes from. Now, this guy, this Chinese spy, in inverted commas, has lifted the notoriety of him. He was referred to as H6. He himself has come out to give us his name. He courted with George Osborne, David Cameron, Theresa May, and some of them don't really... Not only do they remember not meeting him, they don't actually remember what they discussed when they did meet him. But moreover, Starmer, I think, is in a very difficult place because China have got the most deplorable humanitarian blood on their hands, I would say, with the treatment of the Uyghurs in China.
Allies of Putin circling Taiwan. It's brutal, anti-democracy behaviour in Hong Kong.
They didn't exactly. That was my next point. They didn't keep their end of the deal when we gave back Hong Kong to them.
But then we should all be in a business where we're not buying Chinese goods, and we all do. So who are we to preach or criticise against the government?
Well, we could stop buying all Chinese goods.
Yeah, but then where would we get the cheap clothes from, the cheap deals
It's not realistic,
from?
is it? That's the problem. And there's something called the dirty hands theory of politics, which says that actually it's a mucky business. You have to deal with people you don't like.
Hold your nose.
Yeah, hold your nose. And I'm afraid that it's a country of 1.4 billion people. It's going to become the world's preeminent superpower. And we have to find some way of getting on with the Chinese, while also, as you say, calling them out for some of the awful things.
I mean, lots of the sort of commentary over the last few days has been suggesting that they're trying to undermine not only our democratic processes, but our economic stability.
Well,
so
they
that
are.
if we do go after Taiwan, for example, or do some sort of unholy alliance with Putin and Iran or whatever, the West is unable to stand up to them. And that is the future unless we take a strong line on it. And you say it's impossible and unrealistic to be hooked on cheap goods from China. Why not start producing it here? Why not improve our economy in that way, return to manufacturing, all the rest of it? Why are we so hooked on it? And do we have to have everything? There's so much consumerism.
Well, that's the consumer society in with which we live, this very fast-moving, I want it now, I want it now. We do need to join the dots. But when you're faced with an ailing population, not enough people willing to do jobs in this country that care for the ageing population, when you've got such a high cost of living crisis, what are you going to do? The money needs to be spent, and the money needs to be spent as best you can.
What we're going to do is to go to the break to pay the bills. I don't know if there's any Chinese adverts here. They're usually from Swindon or whatever, but there might be a Chinese one, not sure. And we'll be back with these guys right after this.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Unsettled at times across western parts of Europe with some stronger winds and perhaps some outbreaks of rain, but elsewhere it should be largely settled. Fairly breezy around Madeira, though largely dry, just a bit cloudy. Perhaps some thicker cloud moving into parts of Portugal with a risk of some rain, and also fairly breezy around coasts. But elsewhere it's going to be largely settled, lots of dry weather around, though perhaps just a few showers around northern parts of Italy. And the remaining largely settled as we head into the weekend, just a slight dip in temperatures by Saturday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Well, it's interesting because I haven't actually been told specifically what I've done,
Right.
which has resulted in me being removed from my committee position, which was head of daytime. I started a podcast in September in which I interviewed Charlie Bentley-Astor, who's a detransitioner. I then also interviewed Graham Linehan, and I wrote an article for his Substack. And shortly after that, I was told that I had been suspended, and the university union started an investigation into me, and that very quickly became apparent to me that it was an interrogation of my gender-critical views rather than any sort of misconduct that I had been alleged to.
Right.
And Graham Linehan has been outspoken on issues relating to transgender ism, whatever you want to call it, gender ideology. And so perhaps just by having associated yourself with him as a controversial figure, that was why the investigation happened, you suspect?
Yes, and already it's quite clear that guilt by association is a crime that you can commit within university societies. I actually purchased my free speech union membership way before this all happened, when a friend helped me edit the episode with Charlie, and he got in trouble with a separate society who told him that he must disassociate himself from me, and if he didn't, further measures would be taken. So at that point I thought, wow, I better put some damage control in place and purchase my membership in case anything happens to me.
So this decision is made by the student union, right? Is that made up of fellow students? Or who's making this call?
Well, that's actually part of my appeal. So the process has been completely improper. They haven't followed their own guidelines. There are two different guidelines as to whether a complaint is dealt with the society itself, so Leeds Student Radio, or the union, and it's basically been a mishmash of both. So it's been an improper procedure, but it is, as far as I'm aware, it's the student union who's decided to remove me.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Andy and Claire with what's in the papers, and we were just looking at our phones there, just in social media. And Apple, without you knowing, do this sort of update at 4 o'clock in the morning or something, and they change everything, and they change how your phone is set up and whatever it is. I don't want my phone changed. Leave my phone alone. I don't care.
I can't find my photos anymore.
Can't find photos
my favourites
anywhere.
And everything was so organised, and now I'm like, oh.
Is anybody else on?
Yeah.
I had a change to Apple this year, which I hate, detest, because I was what was I before that?
Samsung.
Right. Yeah, but what was it?
Android.
An Android thing. Is your phone updated?
Yeah.
Yeah, awful.
It's just, do you know what else I really hate? That I'm listening to my podcast or something like that on my earpods. Then if I get a call through and someone leaves a message, the AI interprets what the voicemail was and it feeds into my earbuds.
Oh, that's annoying.
Go
away. I didn't want to take the call. That's why it went through to voicemail.
Yeah, but if I wanted to call up Christmas pictures from last year or something, I used to have them all filed. I used to press Christmas. Now I don't know where they are. There's just pictures you took 4 weeks ago. Pictures, I don't care.
But does that not make you think, all our precious pictures are on our phones and just one press of a button and the whole thing's upset?
Well, that's
a reminder to print them out, make those photo books. No, well, never know where they are.
Too many to print out.
Yeah, but just regularly as a discipline.
No, but it keeps everything. It keeps thousands of things you don't want.
Oh, I know.
That's the trouble. So if you send me a picture of your kids playing in the back garden, well, I wouldn't be doing that. But I can't pin it.
Well, they might be listening, so don't be...
Anyway, what are you going to tell us about social media?
So Ofcom have said that the big tech companies aren't doing their job in terms of introducing the measures that are required to protect kids in particular, but everybody from harmful content. So whether you're, Meta or Google or X or OnlyFans, all of these platforms are full of really, really nasty, harmful content. And some
Can
of
I
them
just say something? Just excuse me. Everybody goes on about this harmful content and there's pornography coming at you from every orifice and whatever.
Literally?
Well, literally. But I have not got any harmful content or been threatened. I don't lift up my phone and say, look at all this sex that's coming
but
my
it's on
way.
there. It's on there, and children are able to find it. And we know that we've seen incidences where children have done self-harm or found anorexia promotion or, you know, worst case scenario, sort of suicide glorifying. So it's full of horrifying stuff.
And the other thing is that the Twitter X algorithm, since Elon Musk has taken over, has changed completely so that you're having stuff pushed towards you that you don't even necessarily, you know, to your point, Eamonn, that you don't even necessarily want to see. You've never signed up for it, and it's just being shoved into your newsfeed like that. So
mainly Elon Musk content.
Mainly
Hello
his
again,
tweets.
Elon.
Exactly. But that's the thing, is that actually, if anything, a lot of these platforms are getting worse, not better, and they have to step up.
When was this online safety bill started? Was this not a Theresa May thing?
Oh, it took years and years to I think it passed either early this year or late last year.
So who's in charge of implementing it then? The big firms or Ofcom?
Well, Ofcom were in charge of holding the big tech companies to account.
Do we think they're up to it?
Well, one of the problems is that Ofcom's remit is so
huge.
broad.
Yeah.
And I think the government, when they were putting the bill together, looked around and went, well, where could that fit? Oh, OK, Ofcom can have it. And, you know, they've hired a bunch of people to try and do this, but it's a really, really... It's difficult, it's
also,
complicated.
the fines that Ofcom have the power to implement can just be built into the business model of these huge companies. They can afford a small transgression here. There's no financial incentive for them to actually take any notice of our humble social media.
What on earth would the answer be apart from keeping children safe from the internet and from the World Wide Web?
Keeping them off smartphones and social media, definitely, until they're out of puberty.
But that's a parental responsibility, surely.
Well, parents and children are saying that that's not working and they need help with that.
I heard an interview with Nick Clegg the other day, who's obviously very, very senior at Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, and he was sort of passing the buck and saying it's the App Store that needs to be where you capture people.
It's always somebody else.
It always is.
OK, well, thank you both very much indeed for that. We'll see you again in about 45 minutes' time, which would be good. So what we'll do next hour, we're going to talk about lots of things about Christmas and how you're getting in the mood and the spirit of all of that and how you're preparing for the big day, or has it just all got away from you? Meanwhile, here's your weather update. Let's go to Honor for that.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Gradually turning more unsettled from the west with strengthening winds and also some outbreaks of rain moving in, but it is going to be largely mild for the time of year. Fairly settled across the south and southeast, though plenty of cloud and perhaps some quite murky conditions across the southeast to start with some fog around hilly areas, and gradually turning more unsettled from the west as we see outbreaks of rain across parts of Scotland and then later on moving into parts of Northern Ireland and western parts of England and Wales. This could be quite heavy and persistent at times, particularly in the afternoon across northern parts of Scotland, and it is going to turn more and more blustery from the west throughout the day too, but those temperatures generally holding up between the low double digits. As we finish off the day, those outbreaks of rain set to continue, turning heavy at times around western and northern parts of Scotland, and still those blustery winds, particularly around coastal areas. Outbreaks of rain continuing too across Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, and turning very blustery through into the Irish Sea Channel as well. And once again, those outbreaks of rain for western parts of Wales and southwest England, where once again this could turn heavy for a time. Across the far southeast, it will stay dry, but then gradually we'll see more and more of that rain move its way eastwards as we head into overnight, and turning blustery for most across the country, particularly around those western coasts and northern coasts of Scotland too. But with those winds and plenty of cloud and outbreaks of rain, that's going to hold temperatures up around the high single figures. Heading into tomorrow, it's another unsettled day ahead with outbreaks of rain starting to creep in from the west, turning clearer across Scotland, though plenty of blustery showers moving through here. These could turn wintry across high ground. And then once again, we'll see another change from the southwest as further strong winds and heavy outbreaks of rain start to move in here. So gradually turning more and more unsettled, the best of the brightness across the far east. That's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
Expect a warm front moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In the Highland, the A832 is closed in both directions again today over Moy Bridge at Marybank because of flooding. In County Durham, the A19 is closed northbound off the A67 at the Craythorne junction after an accident causing delays. There's also a lane closed to southbound. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there are 2 lanes closed to eastbound after an accident just before junction 28 at Tingley causing queues. The Port of Holyhead remains closed for emergency repairs with sailings suspended between Holyhead and Dublin. The M3 in Hampshire's partly blocked northbound by an accident between junctions 13 and 12 from Chandler's Ford to Eastleigh causing queues, and in Cornwall the A30 is closed eastbound at Camborne after an accident last night involving a van and a tractor causing delays. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good luck.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. The Prime Minister is under pressure to take China more seriously.
That's after the alleged spy Yang Tengbo was unmasked by the courts yesterday, revealing a web of influence amongst the British establishment.
Now, this comes as Prince Andrew, at the centre of the scandal, confirms he will not be going to the royal Christmas lunch at Sandringham.
Sir Keir Starmer will today visit troops serving on Estonia's border with Russia in a push to support funding for Ukraine. Catherine Forster has the latest.
Welcome to Tallinn, the bitterly cold capital of Estonia. The Prime Minister is here following his trip to Norway. He's come in for a lot of criticism about all these foreign trips. I'll bring you the details of what he's up to shortly.
Lizzie Letby's lawyer has said they'll be asking the Court of Appeal to immediately review all of her convictions because an expert witness in the case has now changed his mind on the cause of death of 3 of the babies.
Brussels is taking the UK to court over breaking the terms of our Brexit deal, which could hinder the PM's attempt at a reset with Europe.
Rachel Reeves' national insurance hikes will cost children's hospices nearly £5 million more every year, calling now for urgent action to stop services being cut.
And as Royal Mail's been sold to a Czech billionaire in a £3.6 billion deal, we're asking, should we be protecting British brands from foreign owners?
And in sport, 2 goals in the last 2 minutes, settle a 1-1 draw between Bournemouth and West Ham. In cricket, England get thumped by New Zealand in the 3rd test. And who is the Manchester United mole or moles leaking team lineups? And does Prince Andrew know anything about it?
Hello there, good morning. A dry but rather cloudy start and turning wet and windy from the west. I'll be here later with all the details.
Hello there, very good morning to you on this Tuesday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster and this is GB News Breakfast.
Paul, once again, we're right.
Yep.
Animals, people prefer animals to humans.
Yes.
Whether it's Christmas or not. Susan says animals, a love of an animal is unconditional. They're like children, should be protected. I can't watch War Horse.
Yep.
Once was enough.
Me?
Well, the War Horse was quite inspiring.
That's a fabulous story.
Lassie Come Home Ring of Bright Water, which was the worst film I have ever seen
and
as a kid.
Incredible Journey, did you ever watch that with the three?
Disney thing, yeah.
I can't watch them.
Yeah.
What was Ring of Bright Water about?
That was about an otter. Yeah, it was about Otter. Midge the otter.
Why would you watch a film about an otter for?
Well, let me tell you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you briefly. And you know what? I am going to do a spoiler because I don't want... And nobody should ever watch this film. So you've got this... It was Bill McKenna, wasn't it? No,
was he the otter?
Yeah, no, the otter was an otter. The otter was played by an otter. And it was Midge. Anyway, had this pet otter. And it goes through the whole film. And they've had this otter and this otter family. And he goes away. And then... a craftsman, I think it is, then right at the very end, I mean, this is just goes...
With an axe.
They go, Midge kills the otter. And I was distraught for years.
Sorry for the otter now, that's awful.
Yeah,
it was
really
terrible.
Sad. And otters are very lovable.
I don't even see why they even put it in the film. It was horrific.
Well, it's based on the book, and it happens in the book.
Well, they shouldn't have done it in the book in the first place. The otter should have been fine, but I don't ever, watch Ring of Bright. I'm sorry, but it was just...
There we go.
OK, well, that's that summed up. Thank you very much indeed.
I don't even want to think about it.
Meanwhile, in the news, the Prime Minister is under pressure to declare China a national security threat.
Yeah, this is all after an alleged Chinese spy with links to Prince Andrew has now been publicly named as 50-year-old Yang Tengbo, following the lifting of an anonymity order.
Mr Yang has also issued a statement calling the reports entirely untrue.
Well, let's get the thoughts of the former political editor at LBC, Theo Usherwood. And look, lots of the newspaper headlines focusing on the grand old Duke of York and yet another embarrassment for the King with his awkward brother. But your position really is that this is actually more about what Sir Keir Starmer does next.
Yes, I mean... Let's not make any bones about it. I mean, this is embarrassing for the Duke of York. There was one message that was sent by a senior aide to the Duke to Yang back in 2021, which says, outside of his close internal confidants, you sit at the very top of a tree that many, many people would like to be on. So this is a man who was at the heart of the Duke of York's operation Pitch at the Palace to bring in more entrepreneurs, and he founded it in China. So it is an embarrassment for the King and an embarrassment for Prince Andrew primarily, but he's going to be served his punishment of not being invited to Sandringham this Christmas, and it's likely that he won't feature, we're told, in any future royal events outside of weddings and funerals. But for Keir Starmer, there's a much thornier decision that needs to be made about the relationship between Britain and China. Yesterday, he described it as a challenge posed by China in what had happened. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is due to go to Beijing in January to bridge closer economic ties between our two countries, but at the same time, there are questions about the extent to China's spy network. If somebody can get to the very top of the royal family in this case, we know there have been incidents of researchers in Parliament.
What are the accusations about spying? I'm looking at the Telegraph here, and they're saying spy suspect was the Duke's money man. Now, as I understand it, that was involved in raising money for the Duke's charity. is it implying anything more than that?
No, I think it's about the extent of influence. This is not, and MI5 have been quite clear about this. This is not necessarily spying in what we'd think of James Bond, selling national secrets or trading in national secrets of national security risks. Prince Andrew, primarily, you wouldn't go to Prince Andrew if you wanted to find out some deep dark secrets within the British establishment. That's not where you would go. But this is about influence. It's about positioning China with Britain and the extent to which there are concerns in this country that Chinese influence in this country, whether it's in infrastructure, in our 5G network or funding for our universities, and how that can be, how China can find its way to the very top of government, to the very top of the royal family, and the influence that it can hold over Britain, especially with commercial activities as well. And I think there is concern, primarily on the Conservative backbenches, about the fact that actually China's influence is spreading. They've sanctioned a number of Conservative MPs who've spoken out against China, and I think that that if there was to be a deterioration in relationships, this country could be very vulnerable if China was to have a hold in our technology infrastructure right across the board.
But this is not an easy dilemma for the Prime Minister. No. You kind of fall into one of two camps, don't you? Either you're with sort of Ian Duncan-Smith and the Tom Tugendhats, the people who've been sanctioned, like you say, very hawkish, very anti anything to do with China, or you kind of take a pragmatic approach and you think, right, well, we do a huge amount of trade with them. It's unrealistic to cut our hands off to spite our face. Maybe we need to make a deal with them and work with them. And there's this scheme that Tom Tugendhat was complaining that the government haven't taken on since they've taken over. But you were explaining to us that actually banks like HSBC are very concerned about putting China on that register because it could undermine our position economically.
Yes. So the National Security Act, which was passed, I mean, primarily it was designed by Mr Tugendhat and other ministers in one of the last pieces of legislation passed by the Conservative government, creates a register so that if you are in the pay or you are acting on behalf of a foreign country, then you need to declare that. Now, there are two tiers, from my understanding, of how that works. There's, if you have a country like France or Germany or whatever, an ally of this country, then that's in the lower tier. But then there's an enhanced tier. Now, there are obvious candidates to go on that, Russia, Iran. And the question is whether China goes on that list. And as you say, HSBC and other businesses have expressed concern that if China does go on that list, that could really hamper business relations.
OK.
Theo, let's bring in some news from Russia, which has just happened this morning. And this is two men who were at the top of the tree in biological defence systems for Russia have been assassinated. Tell us more.
So we know that Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, he is the chief, or was the chief of Russia's nuclear, biological and chemical protection troops. He was killed in Moscow, about 4 miles southeast of the Kremlin this morning, when a bomb hidden in an electric scooter, and there's some fairly disturbing images from the scene, bloody images from the scene, detonated, killing the Lieutenant General and his assistant. There was police and the authorities have been deployed sent to the scene, but it's not yet known who is responsible for this attack. It should just be said, though, that the security services of Ukraine had charged Kirillov in absentia with the alleged use of banned chemical weapons only on Monday. And so there are, of course, going to be questions for Ukraine as to whether it was involved, but we don't yet know anybody who's been apportioned with the blame for this assassination.
Could it be possibly, and obviously early days, but I mean, it could potentially come from his own side, as you say, this could be Putin's work.
Absolutely. And now Britain had also sanctioned Kirillov and the nuclear protection forces for using riot control agents as well. And so we know that this is, in Russia's war in Ukraine, there have been allegations of the use of chemical weapons as well. So this is a delicate matter for the Foreign Office as to who is to blame. And it comes at a time when Keir Starmer is in Estonia. Catherine's been reporting meeting British troops on the border with Russia.
OK. Theo, thank you. We've been talking this morning, haven't we? You were talking about how people love animals in this country, and I think it is a source of national pride that as a nation we are very loving, very generous people, whether that be in terms of giving donations to charity or our love for our furry friends. Well, according to GoFundMe, they've announced Liverpool as the UK's most generous city after its response to the Southport stabbings. And I can well believe that, can't you?
Well believe that, and there's a great sense of giving and from real people who are, see themselves as one big community. Well, the UK has also been named the second most generous country in the whole world, and I'm very proud to say Ireland tops the list for giving and for being involved and wanting to help. Jack Carson joins us now from Liverpool to tell us more on this. It's nice to know. I mean, it's awful that we need people to be so responsive, but it's nice to know that they are responding well in their thousands.
Well, millions of pounds have been raised across the country over the past year for different fundraisers, whether they're small fundraisers to huge fundraisers, like, as you were mentioning, the response that we saw from here in Liverpool and across the country to the Southport attacks. I'm delighted to be joined by Helen Whitehouse this morning from GoFundMe. It's your report that we're talking about this morning. Tell us about what it's really showing us today.
So the Giving Report is something that we sort of do every year to look at the hotspots of generosity around the country. And, it just gives us a really good holistic view on why people are donating to certain causes and what people really care about.
And Liverpool knocked Manchester off the top spot. It's been on the top spot for 3 years. What is it about this city that's made it so generous?
I mean, I think that Merseyside generally is just full of people who, there's a really strong sense of community here and generosity. I mean, most recently in Liverpool, we've seen a lot of fundraisers for the Zoe's Place baby hospice, which was a hospice that was about to shut. And, it was a cause that people really cared about and people really came together to raise money. But also, as you mentioned, sort of Southport earlier this year as well, after that horrific crisis happened, people really came together to support the families. Thousands of pounds are raised for Speller Lane Library. And it's in times of crisis where GoFundMe is a place where people can come and really pull together and just sort of action help, which is what we've seen.
And that community aspect really as well, when people are struggling at times with the money in their own pockets. So how surprised have you been at just how generous, places like Liverpool and the rest of the country have been when people are very open about how maybe they're struggling with money themselves?
It's always really heartening to see the causes that people care about. And, even in times like the cost of living crisis, people are still donating to help others who might be in more need than them. Obviously, just for GB News viewers, just to sort of mention that they have been mentioned by name for Royal British Legion Club fundraiser, which was about to shut, and people donated after a GB News appeal, and they were mentioned by name sort of in the comments. And also for the nuclear test veterans, which was another thing that was really championed by GB News, and your watchers sort of donated to that as well. And I think those are just two examples of causes where they've really captured people, and even though times are tough, people really want to help out. So,
Helen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're going to be live in Liverpool all day, getting the people's reaction to just how generous they've been as they top the list of the most generous city in the UK this year.
Thank you very much indeed, Jack. Absolutely well done to everybody who's involved in that.
It's really humbling, isn't it? Because we all know how hard up everybody's been. This cost of living crisis, inflation's been awful, but people still find the money to think of other people. I think that is a source of national pride.
Yeah, and I think Southport was so horrific, so shocking, and that the people who in the area, who would be associated with the area, just wanted to do their bit. So well done, Liverpool, and consistently well done, Ireland, which always tops these lists.
Yeah, big heart.
And you find people who have less tend to give more. So well done, Ireland.
Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning. As we've been touching on, a bomb that was hidden inside an electric scooter has killed a senior Russian general. That's according to Russia's investigative committee. Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, who's chief of Russia's nuclear, biological and chemical protection troops, was killed outside his apartment building 7 kilometres southeast of the Kremlin.
Also breaking within the past few minutes, the UK's unemployment rate has remained unchanged at 4.3%, exits within the past hour, 3 months to October.
Sarah Sheriff's father and stepmother are to be sentenced later today for murdering the 10-year-old after years of horrific abuse. Last week, they were found guilty of her murder following a trial at the Old Bailey. Her uncle, who lived with them, was also convicted of causing or allowing her death.
To America now, and police say at least 2 people are dead, 6 are injured after a 15-year-old girl opened fire in a classroom at a school in Wisconsin. The shooting occurred at the Abundant Life Christian School in the state capital of Madison. Residents have been asked to avoid the area. Roads are closed.
Felt a bit chillier today than it did yesterday, so maybe there's going to be a white Christmas. Let's take a look at the forecast with Honor Krizik.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Gradually turning more unsettled from the west with strengthening winds and also some outbreaks of rain moving in, but it is going to be largely mild for the time of year. Fairly settled across the south and southeast, though plenty of cloud and perhaps some quite murky conditions across the southeast to start with some fog around hilly areas, and gradually turning more unsettled from the west as we see outbreaks of rain across parts of Scotland and then later on moving into parts of Northern Ireland and western parts of England and Wales. This could be quite heavy and persistent at times, particularly in the afternoon across northern parts of Scotland, and it is going to turn more and more blustery from the west throughout the day too, but those temperatures generally holding up between the low double digits. As we finish off the day, those outbreaks of rain set to continue, turning heavy at times around western and northern parts of Scotland, and still those blustery winds, particularly around coastal areas. Outbreaks of rain continuing too across Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, and turning very blustery through into the Irish Sea Channel as well. And once again, those outbreaks of rain for western parts of Wales and southwest England, where once again this could turn heavy for a time. Across the far southeast, it will stay dry, but then gradually we'll see more and more of that rain move its way eastwards as we head into overnight, and turning blustery for most across the country, particularly around those western coasts and northern coasts of Scotland too. But with those winds and plenty of cloud and outbreaks of rain, that's going to hold temperatures up around the high single figures. Heading into tomorrow, it's another unsettled day ahead with outbreaks of rain starting to creep in from the west, turning clearer across Scotland, though plenty of blustery showers moving through here. These could turn wintry across high ground. And then once again, we'll see another change from the southwest as further strong winds and heavy outbreaks of rain start to move in here. So gradually turning more and more unsettled, the best of the brightness across the far east. That's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You were saying there about a white Christmas, better white Christmas or any Christmas than this grey Christmas. We have had, well, I mean, I was away last week and it was grey, just cloud cover. It was just low all week. I presume it was to see him go back to London. It was to see him in London, just as a blanket of...
It's depressing, isn't it?
Depressing,
and you just go above the clouds and there's the sun and the blue sky. But we always have this little microclimate here.
Yeah.
Just wish it was a bit sunnier.
So, I mean, it can be cold, but if the sun shines, it can be beautiful as well. Right, here's the British giveaway now, Great British Giveaway, and this is your chance to become a very big winner. It's an incredible £50,000.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
It cost him a bit more than 50,000 quid. It would have been very helpful, but no. It cost him billions. The Royal Mail has been bought over by a Czech billionaire. So we are asking...
should we protect British brands from foreign buyers. Would there be any British brands left without foreign buyers?
Money
That is our
talks.
debate.
Money talks. Back after this.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week is Chocolate Week, the ultimate celebration of everything rich, sweet and indulgent.
Yes, and we now have the best person in the studio with us to satisfy all of your chocolate cravings. We're joined now by master chocolatier Ollie the Choc. Ollie,
hello.
really
Hey,
good
Ollie.
to see you this
Thank you
morning.
for having me.
And you brought some of your chocolate in with you.
I did. I
Very
brought some
special.
tasting samples. You're very welcome to help yourself.
So what have you got here? Tell us.
So this is my signature chocolate. I call it the Holy Grail. It's got sea salt flakes, crushed Oreo, caramel fudge pieces, very Moorish.
I love a caramel and salt combo, just, you know. I feel like you see it everywhere now. Look.
You won't be disappointed.
Look, I want everyone to see a close-up of this one. Can we get a shot on this one? So this is Oreo, there we are, caramel and salt. Do you want to try some?
You go first.
Help yourselves. And then this bar of chocolate is a little bit of a wild card. That's a mystery flavour, so...
OK, I love a mystery.
I'm not going to tell you what that is.
Hold on this one. This one's amazing.
Are you?
Oreo, caramel. and
That's
salt.
my biggest seller.
I'll keep my palate clean for this. So this is a mystery flavour.
You've got to guess what that is.
Is that a nut in there, I see? Right, here we go. Ready?
I'm not saying anything.
Talk us through.
Very crunchy.
For me, I'm all about textures in chocolate.
Me too.
It has got a good crunch to it, hasn't it? It's not the kind of flavour that you would expect.
Oh, I can't get it.
Is it sweet? Is it salty?
Wait, no, it's salty, yeah.
It's
OK,
salty.
Hang on, bit more.
OK.
Bit more.
I mean, just keep going.
Crisps? Wait,
Oh.
oh.
It is crispy, it's crunchy. Could it
Right.
be crisps?
I think it could be crisps. Yeah, it's crisps.
So what flavour?
Salt and vinegar. Cheese and onion.
Yes,
Salt
nailed it. You know.
Oh, you're much better than me.
Love that.
Do you know what? I think I've got a bit of a cold, so my taste buds are
Oh, you're going to blame that, are you?
That's my excuse. That's delicious.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Before we talk about British brands and should they remain British, got Paul, British through and through, and the Sports Personality of the Year is tonight, BBC One.
Yeah, it is. You know, it's got bigger and bigger. I loved it. I mean, I'm going to say this, but I loved it in the old days. Used to be in the studio. Isabel raises her eyes, just like... But it was, they used to always just the fun bit at the end. Do you remember they used to do like, there was like, they would get like Frank Bruno to take penalties or something. There'd always be the little bit at the end. See, all the fun seems to have gone out of it. But Sports Personality of the Year, so these are the nominations. Sarah Storey, Paralympian legend, cyclist, Keely Hodgkinson, 800 metres gold. I think she's going to win. Alex Yee,
the favourite,
the triathlete. Luke Littler is also nominated, so there was talk whether he would actually go because he's playing in the World Darts Championships at the moment, so whether... Joe Root set the record for the most runs scored by an English batsman. Jude Bellingham is also nominated as well. Do you know what sport is the most popular sport, the sport that's won more Sports Personality of the Year awards than any other?
Tennis?
No.
Football.
Tennis is 7, the winner is 18. Football is 7 as well. Football's got 7, tennis 7.
Athletics.
Athletics is right. 18 times.
Which is weird because there's hardly any coverage of athletics really anymore, unless there's an Olympics or something.
That's right, but it's usually Olympic year, and also when it goes back, if we're going back to the early 60s when it began, and also because probably it's a solitary sport. So if you have a sports personality, it's usually one in their own. Right, I've also got some old winners as well. Do you want to have a look at these? Yeah. Right, so who? We've got a few pictures of old winners. Hopefully we have these. First one, we're going to go back a few years. Now, look.
Splash it all over.
Splash it all over.
Yeah, Henry Cooper.
Our Henry, what year do you think Henry Cooper won sports
It would be the year he fought Ali. So was that, say that's probably 65.
See, I would have thought that because he did fight him twice. This is, Isabel, are you going to have a go? Go a little later?
Gosh,
69. Splash it all over. 70. 70 was Henry Cooper. Let's go with another one. Right, there we go. We've got to have Des on there. I thought we had to have Des on there. Des should have been Sports Personality of the Year. But Damon Hill, what year was that?
92. Yeah.
96.
Oh.
Let's go again. Got a couple more.
98.
Zara Phillips.
99.
99?
No. 2000. And?
2.
No.
1.
12.
4.
We just throw a number on 3, 4. It was 2006.
6.
Right, and finally 2 winners together, and they were both, now to help you out.
Well, that's Princess.
One won it one year, and the other one won it the year before.
Well, that's
that's the handing over.
Mary Peters.
Mary Peters.
And the year was.
You're going to
I won't even get this right. I think she won in 1970.
Olympics year.
What?
Olympic year.
Tell me, was it a Munich?
Munich Olympics.
72.
72.
So it would have taken place in the summer. This would have been in winter, so it was 72.
72. And Princess Anne?
73.
71. 71. So there we are. Sports Personalities of the Year. On telly tonight. Was it about 7 hours, I think the show goes on for, doesn't it?
Absolutely no link to their personality, though, does it?
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's often the argument. It's all sports personality. Have they got a personality? Haven't they? It's sports person.
Yeah.
Do you know, I think jump jockeys deserve more recognition, and I think that's the bravest thing to do.
Absolutely.
There's so many sports you look at and you think, well, I'm particularly not a fan, not a follower, but I can see what these folk contribute to that.
Brave. Rugby's pretty
It's very brave.
See, I don't think any rugby players have won it since I may be wrong, but in my memory, I'm thinking 2003. Johnny Wilkinson won it, and Martin Johnson was second. But Sir Mark Cavendish will get a special award. I mean, he should have been nominated in the shortlist for breaking Eddie Merckx's record and the most Tour de France wins, stage wins. But he is going to be getting the Lifetime Achievement Award, because Kenny Dalglish got it last year. Do you remember? Yeah. So Mark Cavendish will be getting that. So at least he's going to pick up something.
Antarctic Marathon, Coity. Tell us about that. We've got about 45 seconds to do that in.
You better have a little look at it. I keep going through marathons and weird marathons, so here's another one for you. This is the Antarctic Marathon, the Union Glacier that's just happened, southernmost athletic event on Earth. 600 miles from the South Pole. 600
miles, and that is the South Pole we're looking at.
Yeah, and that's it, 26 miles. And again, they just run round and round, not much to look at. Look at that. Honestly, this like Scott the Antarctic, they filled up that.
They're drinking snow.
Yeah, that's what John Mills did, didn't he?
Scott of the Antarctic.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So there we are. I mean, that's a miserable thing to try.
And that's the best weather possible. There we go.
Just running. It's like me running into work this morning.
Thanks, Paul.
See you tomorrow.
Right, stay with us. Still to come, we'll be debating if British brands should be kept out of foreign hands. Stay with us for that.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In County Durham, the A19 is closed northbound off the A67 at the Craythorne junction after an accident. There are delays with a lane closure on the southbound side too. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, 3 out of 4 lanes are closed anti-clockwise after an accident between junctions 13 and 12 from Worsley to the Eccles interchange. There are queues for around 5.5 miles towards there from junction 17 at Prestwich. The port of Holyhead remains closed because of storm damage, with sailings between Holyhead and Dublin suspended. In Cambridge, the A47 is closed eastbound on the Soap Parkway in Peterborough for an investigation. On the M25 in Essex, there's a lane closed anti-clockwise after an accident just before the Honsdale Tunnel between junctions 26 and 25 from Waltham Abbey to the A10 causing queues. And in Cornwall, the A30 is closed eastbound at Cambourne after an accident last night.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
My next guest knew George Carman rather intimately. Indeed, he immediately asked her for her hand in marriage when they first met. Karen Phillips knew Carman from 1986 and was a close friend until his death in 2001. Karen has used court transcripts and personal documents to construct her new book, Get Carman. There it is. And here you are. Karen, thank you very much indeed. So you knew him very well, and actually he began to write a little bit of an autobiography just in the weeks before his death. And from those pages, I was struck by the amount of uncertainty that there was about the man. This man who was so confident in court, who charmed juries so famously, but in some ways felt that he was an actor, in some ways felt that he was fighting back nerves and uncertainties. Is that true?
I think he was quite worried about every case. It was much more that he was concerned for the client. He always wanted to do his best. He worked so hard to win a case, not really for his personal satisfaction, but because he didn't want to let people down.
His success rate was extraordinary, and, you know, I'll choose my words carefully here, but shall we say that many people were surprised at the time that Jeremy Thorpe was found not guilty. It was astonishing in the case of Jonathan Aitken, for example, that the principal charge against him, which was that he'd been corrupt in arms dealings, I don't think that was ever actually reached during the court. It seems even more surprising today that people who were employed by Mohammed Fayed were believed in the case of Neil Hamilton. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, his results are extraordinary.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Now, the government has approved the £3.6 billion sale of Royal Mail's parent company to the Czech billionaire Daniel Kretinsky.
Well, it's all part of the deal that the government will retain a golden share, giving it control over any major governance changes. Now, this morning we are asking, should we protect British brands from foreign buyers?
Well, joining us now is the former Labour spokesman James Mathewson and the senior fellow at the Adam Smith Institute, Tim Worstel. Welcome to both of you. Tim, first of all, plenty of people getting upset about this. It's worth pointing out Daniel Kretinsky not only now owns Royal Mail, but he's also got a big stake in Sainsbury's, the sportswear retailer Foot Locker. He's also a stakeholder, 27% of West Ham United. Is that a source of concern?
No, not at all. The number of people who wish to buy something is what determines the price of it. And if we limit the purchase of British companies to people who are Britons, that reduces the number of people who could possibly buy something and thus lowers the value. If we allow Johnny Foreigner to come in and buy things, then the values go up. Why would we want to make British businesses worth less?
What would the chances ever be, James, of China coming in and buying something like the Royal Mail?
Well, this is the thing. It depends who and where and what. And obviously it has to be appraised on a case-by-case basis because, as you rightly point out, there are people, there are people domestically who wouldn't want to buy things and own things, but there are people in foreign instances where we wouldn't want that to be the case. However, with something like Royal Mail, I mean, this is not only a British institute, but it currently provides a basic service to the British people. It's not too radical to say, because it wasn't too long ago that it was owned by the British people, of course. And obviously the government is doing what it can do best in this instance, which is try and retain this golden share where it has influence and doesn't give away all of its cards, in this sale. But it should be something that we can take pride in and that the British people can own themselves and have complete control of, because it is an important service for us. Many of us use it, many of us still use it daily. So, you know, it's an important part of our country economically, but also culturally. And we should be able to take pride in the fact that the British people own Royal Mail.
Well, James, they don't, or they won't come next March. So where's your pride, James, in Royal Mail? Does it stay there?
I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, we'll still have that control share as a government, but it just erodes that brand itself. And, you know, I know it sounds cheap talking about brands and the identity of companies and all the rest of it. And listen, as a socialist, I have no joy in doing that. But when it comes to something like Royal Mail that has so much history and so much heritage when it comes to the British people, I think a lot of people will be disappointed to see it, not only in private hands as it has been for some time now, and something that the Labour Party initially was against, but also in the hands of somebody who isn't actually themselves British, and it just seems cheap in the sense that we're selling off to the highest bidder, and we're losing even more of that cultural control of an institution, like I say.
And Tim, you say that we shouldn't be afraid of, and I quote you, Johnny Foreigner, you know, perhaps bringing in the highest bid. Would you draw the line at perhaps a foreign state? You know, there was lots of controversy when the UAE, for example, was trying as a state to buy a British newspaper, the Daily Telegraph, and a lot of people see a distinction between state ownership, foreign state ownership, and foreigners as individuals.
Well, I mean, if we're going to complain about state ownership, then of course we should complain about the fact that the Royal Mail was owned by the British state. Yeah, I mean, it's you can't make both arguments. But the going back to this idea of cultural importance and so on, the basic problem with the Royal Mail is that it's about a quarter as important as it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we Britons sent maybe 20 billion letters a year. Now we send about 5 billion. So Royal Mail's about a quarter as important as it was. That's just how it happens. You know, businesses, technologies have their time. And the idea of a universal mail service seems to be one of those technologies that is running out of its time. This happens. You know, people weeks back were cheering on the fact that Britain had stopped using coal. Now we'd used coal for 700 years. And now we don't. And technologies have their time and their place. If we're not sending letters, which we're sending many, many fewer, then Royal Mail is a technology which is on the way out. Yeah. Now, if we can flog it off to someone else, then that's pretty good.
But Tim, I presume what you're saying there is actually, when you look at this is not a bad deal, because without this deal, the Royal Mail would be down the pan, really.
The Royal Mail is dying is a bit too strong, but it's certainly shrinking as a business. And yes, by definition, this deal is better than what was happening before. Before Mr. Kutinsky made his bid, the Royal Mail was valued about 2.2, 2.3 billion pounds. He's paying 3.6 billion. That's a better deal by 1.3 billion pounds. The numbers don't lie there. He's offering more money than it was worth before he made his offer. That's good.
All right, we have to leave it there. James Mathewson, Tim Walsall, with different views on whether or not we should protect British brands from foreign buyers. Thanks for your
What do you think? That's the question.
Indeed.
Just back to this breaking news situation, Ukraine security services have claimed responsibility for the killing of a Russian general and his accomplice. This is from the Reuters news agency.
Yeah, the source that they're quoting says that Kyiv regarded him as a war criminal and, I quote, absolutely legitimate target, accusing him of ordering the use of prohibited chemical weapons against Ukrainian forces in the war. We had been speculating who might have been behind this attack that was detonated via an electric scooter just 4 miles southeast of the Kremlin in Moscow. But Ukraine, as Eamonn was saying, now claiming responsibility for those deaths this morning.
Look, let's take a break and we'll come back with the newspapers. But before that, let's have a look at the weather situation as it affects the whole of Europe. If you're thinking of going on a winter break, here's where the sun is.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Unsettled at times across western parts of Europe with some stronger winds and perhaps some outbreaks of rain, but elsewhere it should be largely settled. Fairly breezy around Madeira, though largely dry, just a bit cloudy. Perhaps some thicker cloud moving into parts of Portugal with a risk of some rain, and also fairly breezy around coasts. But elsewhere it's going to be largely settled. Lots of dry weather around, though perhaps just a few showers around northern parts of Italy. And the remaining largely settled as we head into the weekend. Just a slight dip in temperatures by Saturday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Love a bit of baking and share some hot tips. We're delighted to be joined by our baking extraordinaire, Matty Edgell, who won Great British Bake Off last year. Woo! Welcome. Congratulations as well. I'm sure you're sick of being congratulated.
And there's a nice reminder.
No, you like all the glory.
Yeah.
What was it like winning the Great British Bake Off? What's the last year been like for you?
Winning it was I was not expecting to win. At any point until they said my name.
You're a very humble
nice
guy.
Surprise. No, I'm just
really
in touch with reality. Yeah, no, I wasn't.
Was it quite a close race throughout then?
Yeah, I considered myself the underdog throughout. I think the first week I turned around after the showstopper and kind of saw how good everyone was, and then looked at mine and thought, how have I got here? And that kind of theme followed through.
But then that surely like an underdog. You on.
Yeah,
it
did.
Actually, I'm going to get better throughout this.
Yeah, I think it made me kind of like really tune into the feedback that they was giving me and trying to embed that throughout. So that's probably why.
Could you feel yourself improving as the series went on?
Definitely, and I think also like kind of simultaneously my confidence improved at the same time, and then that like little bit of belief in myself probably helped out as well.
What was your strength? Biscuits, cake, bread?
I think cake's my strength. I think cake, typically, if you start baking, that's probably where you start, isn't it? So that was what I knew most.
How did you start baking?
I've been asked this so many times since...
You don't know?
I attribute it to my nan.
Oh,
sweet. But, yeah, I would say... I think most people probably attribute it to, like, a grandparent or something that they maybe done with, like, their parents... when they was growing up, so that's I'll give it to my nan.
Or the major lockdown baking boom.
Yeah, banana bread.
Everybody all over the place, isn't it? It's good.
Yeah, it's really good. I love a banana bread, even now.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, Sir Keir Starmer has met with the Estonian Prime Minister and other world leaders at the Joint Expeditionary Force Defence and Security Summit today. And joining us now is Catherine Forster, who's travelling with the Prime Minister. And Catherine, he's been getting a bit of flack for seemingly always being overseas.
Yes, he's come in for quite a lot of flack for this, hasn't he? I can confirm that this is absolutely, definitely his last foreign trip. We're on the second day of it today, coming home this evening. And I was talking to one of his team yesterday saying, you know, why is he abroad so much? Because a lot of people are asking, frankly, why he isn't spending more time at home fixing problems there? And their answer was that he'd rather be home with his kids, and that he's doing it because he wants to bring growth, he wants to bring jobs to the United Kingdom. So yesterday we were in Norway at this carbon capture and storage plant Norway is investing in a similar plant that's going to be built in Teesside. And today he's been meeting with business leaders here in Estonia, and they're announcing a 50 million euro investment by a tech startup into the UK, R&D in defence technology. So trumpeting those wins, because of course the government have said their central mission is growth. We're seeing precious little of that. Rachel Reeves' budget resulted in pretty anemic forecasts going forward, to put it mildly. But he's here now talking about defence and security with the Joint Expeditionary Force Summit carrying on behind me. Huge concern, of course, about Russia, about what happens to Ukraine when Donald Trump becomes president in January. A lot of talk, too, about defence spending. Estonia spend 3.5%, but many NATO countries still not paying anything like enough.
Thank you very much indeed, Catherine. Back in studio, Claire Muldoon and Andy Williams here to go through the newspapers. There's Andy there. OK, and we're going to talk Christmas cards first of all, Claire, and this is the Sussex, which is Harry and Meghan.
Yeah, so they're framing this. They've framed their picture of various, various events they've been at. It shows them to be very humanitarian, very touchy-feely, everything that the royal family isn't. But the thing that really gets me is, of course, they've framed it as happy holiday. There's nothing happy holidays about this season. The season, the clue is in the name. It's Christmas. Can we just stop fooling around and call it what it is, please? Especially them in Montecito. You can
release
go and do one.
Omid Scobie. Not
really?
Yeah, as an e-card rather than a...
Oh, how globally friendly and environmentally friendly, isn't it? Can these two do no wrong? You probably love it, Andy. You've probably got one, have you?
Love what? E-cards?
Yeah, oh, no.
Happy holiday.
Happy
holidays.
I don't have a problem with happy holidays. It's not the only religious festival at this time of year. There's Hanukkah.
Only it's very rare that Hanukkah falls on the 25th of December.
No, I know, but it's the time of year, right? I can't get too worked up about it.
The time of year is
in the same way as I can't get too worked up about Harry and Meghan. You know, they're both annoying. Doesn't really bother me. If they want to send people a Christmas card and it's an e-card, that seems fine. I wish I was in Montecito for Christmas. Lovely and warm.
Oh, don't. Absolutely ridiculous.
Scots cut off from buying Christmas pudding under ludicrous alcohol law. Oh, that's another Claire story.
It is, isn't it?
Sorry, we're OK. Hurry up. Go on.
You think it's a stupid story because it's mine?
Yes, because you've done a story and now it should be Andy's turn to do a story. But who on earth put you two together there? But anyway, tell me about...
You did?
I didn't do it. Scottish pudding.
Right, the two best things to happen today, right. Humza Yousaf has just announced that he's resigning in 2026 from being an MSP. Woo! And now we find that Scots cannot buy Christmas puddings or Christmas cakes before 10 a.m. because they've got alcohol in them.
Seriously?
Yes.
What, are they suggesting that people will bulk buying Christmas cake to get drunk?
No, well...
That's crazy.
Goodness knows what they think would happen. So Mr and Mrs Meldrum from Newton Mearns, a lovely part of southwest Glasgow, sorry, have complained and they were seething because they couldn't buy... What's the point of being able to go to a supermarket, go to the opening time, think you can get your shopping, go to the self-service till because they've done away with people, haven't they? And you couldn't even buy it.
I would like some YouTuber or something, to buy a ton of tiramisu and see how much it takes to feel even the tiniest bit tipsy.
Well, exactly. But that's just the ludicrous laws that the SNP have brought in with minimum unit pricing.
I'm assuming the law is there, and because the pudding has got alcohol in it, they can't sell the pudding.
Well, they need some common sense needs to prevail. Get it over with and get them being able to buy it.
Okay. Right, Andy, let's talk about the story in The Guardian. This is the woman who threw a milkshake at Farage getting a suspended sentence.
Yeah,
I didn't know. Suspended sentence from what? OnlyFans? I didn't know she was on OnlyFans. This is where she gets up and dances and takes her clothes off and things.
She's an OnlyFans model. I don't know whether she dances or takes her clothes off because I'm not a subscriber, but she has been given a 13-week suspended prison sentence. But what I want to talk about is the fact that, as always, Nigel Farage takes the first opportunity to turn this into some kind of conspiracy theory. So he's saying, oh, you know, this is just two-tier policing at work. And no, it's not. You know, I completely agree with him that it was an awful thing to have done. And he says incidents like this put people off standing for public office.
Why is that a conspiracy theory for him to have said it's two-tier policing?
Because there's no evidence that it's two-tier policing.
Right,
as I understand
to
it,
people what two-tier policing is.
So the idea of two-tier policing, which I don't really buy into at all, is that certain people are treated in one way for certain crimes versus another for political reasons. And there's an idea that the Labour government in particular and Keir Starmer have instituted some kind of informal steer that we should be treating different people in
Although Jeremy
different ways.
Corbyn had an egg thrown at him and the perpetrator of that was jailed, but the idea that the government is behind any change in the way things are policed seems to be unfair, given that these are decisions made by the court independent of government and there are guidelines and, you know, they are fully within the guidelines that this judge, their starting point, you know, it was community order and goes up to a 16th week of jail.
Yeah, but she hasn't got a maximum sentence, has she? I guarantee if she was from a council estate somewhere around the country, her sentence would have been heavier.
She also pled guilty to it, which helped minimise any punitive set down by the judge.
The point is, she has a criminal record now, right? So she has been punished. That is something that will follow her for the rest of her life for doing something pretty stupid. But my point, I mean, I, as you were saying, Isabel, I don't think it's some big political sort of witch hunt against Nigel Farage. I just think that's how courts decide things.
The bigger picture here is, though, safeguarding MPs and how volatile the country is. And I think it's, I mean, regardless of how uptight you get, and regardless of how much I hate the SNP, I would never think of hurling something at someone. It's horrendous, horrific. And we've already had MPs murdered. David Ames and Joe Cox.
Claire, can we talk about the knowledge? Apparently it can help cabbies from developing dementia.
This is a great story. It really does when you think about it. Cabbies and also ambulance drivers, paramedics, have got a less likely chance of developing Alzheimer's in later age. Because they're using their brain.
Do you know how long it takes to get the knowledge?
Really long time.
It's like something like 3 years.
And only 50% of those that go for it actually get it. They've got to memorise 25,000 streets or something.
I quite like testing cabbies when I get in a black cab. Do you? Yeah, it's quite fun. See if they can find their way, and they're very impressive.
I was in an Uber the other night, and the driver clearly had. Most Uber drivers are great, but this particular guy,
Uber drivers have a clue.
He had no idea where he was going. So he was sort of turning into side streets and then
he's following
sat-nav. Were they from London?
Yeah, I don't know.
All right.
Let's talk about Father Christmas, Mother Christmas. Let's talk about that, Andy.
The Sun are getting worked up because apparently hundreds of Santa's grottos have dropped Father Christmas in place of a female equivalent. So National Trust properties, museums, garden centres, they have having female Father Christmas, Mother Christmas.
What's your view on that?
That's ridiculous.
Does it matter?
Ridiculous what way? To get worked up? Or
It's Father Christmas.
Oh, right. So.
Oh no, I think it's ridiculous to get
a Mother Christmas.
Yeah.
Right, OK. What about Scrooge, Claire?
Oh, he lives in Fulham. He lives in Fulham.
So this is people who are charging other people coming to have their Christmas dinner with them because of the cost of living crisis.
Best thing about this man's his wife, because she said that any money this skinflint makes, I'm giving it to charity. £75. And the reason he's made the front page of the Daily Star, which is one of my favourite papers, he's actually the tech guru for this chip and pin card reader thing.
So he's going round the Christmas table.
Going round the Christmas table. And what if they do musical chairs? I think it's when the music stops, you've got the card, you pay.
We've got to do musical chairs now. Guys, thank you very much indeed. Here's your weather.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Gradually turning more unsettled from the west with strengthening winds and also some outbreaks of rain moving in, but it is going to be largely mild for the time of year. Fairly settled across the south and southeast, though plenty of cloud and perhaps some quite murky conditions across the southeast to start with some fog around hilly areas, and gradually turning more unsettled from the west as we see outbreaks of rain across parts of Scotland and then later on moving into parts of Northern Ireland and western parts of England and Wales. This could be be quite heavy and persistent at times, particularly in the afternoon across northern parts of Scotland, and it is going to turn more and more blustery from the west throughout the day too, but those temperatures generally holding up between the low double digits. As we finish off the day, those outbreaks of rain set to continue, turning heavy at times around western and northern parts of Scotland, and still those blustery winds, particularly around coastal areas. Outbreaks of rain continuing too across Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, and turning very blustery through into the Irish Sea Channel as well. And once again, those outbreaks of rain for western parts of Wales and southwest England, where once again this could turn heavy for a time. Across the far southeast, it will stay dry, but then gradually we'll see more and more of that rain move its way eastwards as we head into overnight, and turning blustery for most across the country, particularly around those western coasts and northern coasts of Scotland too. But with those winds and plenty of cloud and outbreaks of rain, that's going to hold temperatures up around the high single figures. Heading into tomorrow, it's another unsettled day ahead, with outbreaks of rain starting to creep in from the west, turning clearer across Scotland, though plenty of blustery showers moving through here. These could turn wintry across high ground. And then once again, we'll see another change from the southwest as further strong winds and heavy outbreaks of rain start to move in here. So gradually turning more and more unsettled, the best of the brightness across the far east. That's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M8 in Glasgow, the outside lanes closed eastbound at junction 25 at Cardonald after an accident, with queues from junction 26 at Hillington. In County Durham, the A19 is closed northbound off the A67 at Craythorne after an accident. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, 2 lanes are closed eastbound just before junction 28 at Tingley after an accident, with queues from junction 26 at Chain Bar. The port of Holyhead remains closed, with sailing suspended between Holyhead and Dublin. In Lincolnshire, the A15 is blocked each way by an accident between Market Deeping and Langtoft. In Kent, the A21 is blocked each way by an accident between Lamberhurst and Flimwell. The M3 in Hampshire is partly blocked northbound by an accident between junctions 13 and 12 from Chandler's Ford to Eastleigh, causing queues. And in Cornwall, the A30 is closed eastbound at Camborne after an accident last night, causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You could be
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And
the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. The Prime Minister's under pressure to take China more seriously.
That's after the alleged spy was unmasked by the courts, revealing a web of influence amongst the British establishment.
And it comes as Prince Andrew's at the centre of the scandal and confirms he won't be attending the Royals' Christmas at Sandringham.
The Prime Minister will today visit troops in Estonia on the border with Russia in a push to support funding for Ukraine.
Lucy Letby's lawyer has said they'll be asking the Court of Appeal to immediately review all of her convictions because an expert witness has now changed his mind on the cause of death of 3 of the babies.
Brussels is taking the UK to court over breaking the terms of the Brexit deal, which could hinder the Prime Minister's reset with Europe.
Rachel Reeves's national insurance hikes will cost children's hospices nearly £5 million more per year. It's leading to calls for urgent action to stop services being cut.
Hello there, good morning. A dry but rather cloudy start and turning wet and windy from the west. I'll be here later with all the details.
But we're here right now, and very good to have you on board, whether you're watching us, whether you're listening to us. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast. We start with that breaking news that Claire actually was informing us about during the papers just then, that Scotland's former First Minister, Humza Yousaf, has this morning announced that he will not be running for re-election to the Scottish Parliament in 2026. In a statement, he said, "I think the time is right for me to step down, step away from frontline politics and make way for the next generation of elected members."
The Prime Minister is under pressure to declare China a national security threat. That's after an alleged Chinese spy with links to Prince Andrew has been publicly named as 50-year-old Yang Tengbo, following the lifting of an anonymity order.
Well, Mr Yang's also issued a statement calling the reports entirely untrue.
Let's talk to the political editor, Theo Usherwood, on this one. Theo, what do you make? How's this turning out?
Well, it's not good news for the King, and it's not good news for Prince Andrew. This wasn't a man, Yang Tengbo, who was simply on the edges. This was somebody who visited Buckingham Palace twice. He was described as a close confidant with an unusual degree of trust from Prince Andrew, who was responsible for launching the Pitch at the Palace scheme for entrepreneurs in China. And we also know that, you know, this isn't a model that was just being rolled out at Buckingham Palace with the Prince's scheme, but schools like Gordonson School in Scotland, which is a very prestigious boarding school, was also looking at setting up campuses in China. And there's concern that this goes far beyond the story in Buckingham Palace. And there's questions now, of course, for Keir Starmer. Does he reach out and try and secure closer economic ties with China, or does he listen to those voices in the security services who are saying, actually, we need to be very cautious given the extent of Chinese involvement in everything from our parliament to businesses and even our royal family?
You only have to look, though, at the vast difference in the 14 years that the government, the predecessors were in power, and their approaches, when you had the golden era under Cameron and Osborne, ending in this epoch-defining threat under Rishi Sunak. I mean, they chopped and changed all over the place, which gives you an insight into what a difficult issue this is for any leader to grapple with. The Prime Minister's also under huge pressure to try and sort out the economy. Rachel Reeves is flying out there in the new year, trying to bolster economic ties with, you know, an economic powerhouse. Is it, you know, cutting off our nose to spite our face if we continue to what they will perceive to be insult them in this way?
You're quite right. It's a hokey-cokey. David Cameron and George Osborne literally rolled out the red carpet for President Xi Jinping. He was afforded a state visit with a dinner with the Queen at Buckingham, late Queen Elizabeth II at Buckingham Palace, and all of the frills that go with that. Theresa May then came into power after David Cameron. We took a much more hawkish stance, which fed through, obviously, to Rishi Sunak. At a particular time with Theresa May, there was concern about Huawei, which was the technology firm investing and building parts of our 5G infrastructure network, and whether that would give the Chinese unprecedented power in our communications, everything from the way we run our National Health Service all the way through to, you know, the way we use our mobile phones and rely on 5G. And then, of course, as you say, Rishi Sunak took a very firm line. Keir Starmer, on the other hand, as he's going for economic growth, there are three strands to it. Firstly, building more homes. Secondly, a closer relationship with the European Union. And then thirdly, looking to countries like China to build closer economic business ties to secure economic growth. And the likes of HSBC have said that actually, if Keir Starmer was to take a hard line against China and to place it on this new enhanced list that's going to go with the National Security Act for countries where you have to declare all your dealings with them if you are registering any interest in the UK, then actually that could have a detrimental impact on businesses.
What are the chances of Chris Yang sending an invitation to Andrew and his family and say, come on, hop over to China for lunch?
Yeah, I think there's an interesting point to your question, Eamonn, and that is actually we're talking about the hard line, and MI5 and the other services have been very cautious about China. But Chris Yang's defence is primarily that actually he had no ulterior motive, that he was not. This was not an effort to spy on this country. That his defence was that actually he wants to build, help the royal family and others build closer economic ties with China. But clearly, there's a deep concern, and this has been reflected by Sir Ken McCullum, the Director General of MI5, in his last two security updates about China actually having a more sinister motive.
We've got the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, in a few minutes coming on the channel. We can ask her about what she's doing to ensure that our tertiary institutions, these universities, which is obviously the in route for
many of them, huge amounts of money.
How can she make sure that national security is uppermost? Because we know that a huge part of legal migration into this country and then leave to remain is via our universities.
And in this case, it was via the University of York, because Yang Tenbo came in the first instance as a junior Chinese civil servant to study public policy at the University of York to a master's level, and managed to inveigle his way up. I mean, you've got to not to praise him, but he's done well at his job to get all the way from studying for a master's in public policy to the University of York to being one of the Duke of York's Grand Old Duke of York's most closest confidants. I mean, he's done his job well But absolutely, universities also, when they're looking, it's not just in terms of postgraduate degrees, and we know that overseas students pay a huge amount to study in this country, but it's also in terms of funding projects in universities, cash-strapped academia. Can you influence public policy? Can you influence public opinion by supporting particular academics and pieces of research? Universities are absolutely crucial to this.
Theo Usher, we've got to leave it there. Thanks very much for your take on things. Much appreciated. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, plans to hike employers' national insurance. We all know that, and it's believed to cost hospices nearly £5 million more each year. This is in England alone, and we didn't know that.
And it means that roughly 1 in 5 hospices around the country are already reducing the services that they provide. Some are warning that they're at risk of closure.
Let's go to our reporter, Sophie Reaper. Sophie's at a hospice in Didsbury in Greater Manchester. Sophie.
Well, a very good morning to you both. Yes, there is concern around adult and children hospices, and we're here at the Francis House Children's Hospice in Greater Manchester, as you say. And joining me now, let's get straight into it, is the CEO, David Ireland. David, thank you so much for joining us this morning to talk a little bit about this. Talk to us about the crisis that our hospices find themselves in right now.
I think the problem we've got is we need some confirmation of funding. And we have been told on radio broadcasts that West Streeting is going to make an announcement prior to Christmas. Well, we're 8 days away, so we need to hear. All hospices have struggled since the COVID pandemic because we had a change in the way funding came in through fundraising, and we also then had the economic downturn and gas bills going through the roof. Since then, we've had other things that have happened, and fundraising is very different to what it was before the pandemic. However, we are still managing to keep our heads above water, but we have relied on our government grant, which came through NHS England as a central funded grant. For Francis House, that's about 15% of our £5 million that we need to operate the hospice. Our overall cost with the residential units about £7.5 million. However, as soon as the Labour government came into power, we had the national insurance hike, which has added £128,000 onto my wage bill overnight. We are assured that some account of this is going to be taken when West Streeting makes an announcement, but at this moment in time we don't know whether we're going to get money in addition to the £25 million children's grant which has been promised.
Now, that is a big concern, isn't it? We're obviously waiting on that announcement. Last year, the grant was 25 million, and that was 15%. But on top of this national insurance hike, where does that leave you? What are you going to do about the extra money if you don't get it? How are you going to continue?
Well, the thing about Francis House is we have been able to stabilise our funding. It's not going to be a worry that we can't manage to keep going, and I want to assure people out there that Francis House will keep helping the families that are on our roll. Expanding and developing the service to meet the growing need is going to be another matter. We do have things that we can do to ameliorate the problem, but the big problem is not knowing from one year to the next what we're going to get in the way of government grant. We need at least some assurance that we've got some grant similar or better than what we've got at the moment in order to continue, and we need it over the 5 year of the Parliament. It needs to be something that's committed.
Now, Francis House is secure, but some other children's hospices aren't in a safe position, are they? And we were talking earlier, there's around 54 children's hospices in the UK. If only 10 of those close, that's around a fifth of children's hospices. What are families with sick children going to do?
Well, it's at one time the children's hospices were like a safety net, adding services to what statutory provision gave. We've become the front line, basically. We've become the front line, and we need to be sure that we can continue to expand and develop the service to pick up where there's failures in statutory provision.
David, thank you so much for joining us this morning. There we are. Francis House may be in a secure position, but many children's hospices and adult hospices are not in that same position. So the question is now going to be on the government. What are they going to do to secure our hospices?
Sophie, appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed.
Such an emotive one, isn't it? I mean,
she's at a hospice there in Didsbury.
There's so much upset around the winter fuel payments for pensioners. Of course, there's upset around this inheritance tax for farmers. But children dying in hospices, not being able to get an adequate death from and nursing care.
Well, the saddest thing I can ever remember is visiting the Teenage Cancer Trust's hospice in Belfast and going in a few days before Christmas and speaking to a few people, and one girl in particular, and she said, "Oh, you must come and see me again," or whatever it is. I said, "I'll tell you, I'll come up after Boxing Day," and I did.
She'd gone.
Very sad, very sad. Now, during Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we're hearing from church ministers across the country. Each day they have a special message from them to you, all about this festive season. Hope you enjoy.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 17.
Hello, I'm Reverend Mike Milmine and welcome to St Leonard's Church in Denton, where I'm priest in charge. Many of our favourite stories begin like this. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away. But the Christmas story begins very differently. St Luke's account starts like this. In the reign of Caesar Augustus, while Quirinius was governor of Syria, real people, real dates, the Christmas story is anchored in human history. It's tempting to cast the Christmas story as a lesson-filled fable full of moral nuggets that we can extract in the way that we do with a fairy tale. But the Christmas story won't allow itself to be read in that way. The truth and endurance of the Christmas story lies in the fact that the events really did happen. The mere fact that it's 2024 is testimony to that, the decisive moment in which God breaks into human history and nothing will ever be the same again.
And a reminder, you can see all the special Advent messages on our website, gbnews.com/Advent.
Time now for the Great British Giveaway. It's your chance to become one of our biggest ever winners because the prize money is
£50,000 in tax-free cash. That'd be a great way to start 2025, wouldn't it? Here's how it could be yours.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year. Good luck.
Still to come, we're going to be joined by the Secretary of State for Education, Bridget Phillips, and lots to talk to her about today, not least the upcoming sentencing of Sarah Sharif. That's at 10 o'clock this morning, but she's introducing some new legislation that could have meant that that murder never took place. More on that in just a moment.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And the latest series of Big Brother has just wrapped up. And as always, the housemates managed to cause a stir.
Yeah, that's an understatement. After 5 weeks of drama and twists and turns, 6 housemates were left to battle it out for a £90,000 prize.
Well, our next guest was there to the bitter end, coming third in this year's competition.
6 weeks you were in there.
Oh, I tell you what, it was a long time.
What goes through your mind? Is it, do you start to go a bit sort of, what do they call it, cabin fever?
Yeah.
Do you go a bit nutty?
Like, at times, not that I've ever been in prison, but I kind of likened it to being in jail, particularly when we were having to eat the porridge with water, no sugar, or, you know, that was difficult. And the feeling that you just can't leave. I mean, you can, but, you know, it was, yeah, it was
You can,
tough.
but you won't get your hands on that prize money.
No, exactly.
You made it to the end.
Yeah.
And it's quite a big house, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you feel as though you can get away from housemates if they're annoying you a bit, or does it feel like your hot house with
No,
people
you
don't
can.
like very much?
If you're sort of, you know, if you're not comfortable with a certain conversation or something like that, you can always take yourself and move away. But can you have time to yourself? No. Not really. I mean, even you might think, do you know what, I'll just go and lock myself in the toilet for a few minutes. There's a camera and there's a mic in there, so you can't escape that. And then you're obviously wearing a mic, so there is that little feeling of, you know, I could just do with having 5 minutes to myself, but you can't really get it.
You've met up with one side of the house, but not the other side yet. But is that still on the cards, do you think?
I hope so, yeah, because I liked every single person in that house, despite a few whispers on the internet, you know, like, do you not like this? I liked everybody in the house, never had a bad word with anybody, so...
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Just to end off the programme, we have got a big name interview from politics, the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson.
Yes, good morning and welcome to the programme. Joining us live from Westminster. In around 40 minutes' time, we're going to see the sentencing of the father and stepmother of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif, who was taken out of school without any questions asked. And you're bringing in some legislation today that you believe means something like this can never happen again. Tell us more.
Yes, what we saw in the case of Sarah Sharif in terms of the violence and the abuse that she experienced in her short life is very hard to read. I mean, it's unspeakable what she experienced at the hands of those who are meant to be there to love and protect her, and I really do hope they face the full force of the law when sentencing takes place later on this morning. The measures that I'm setting out today are about how we protect children and keep them safe, that we've got much clearer visibility of where children are and where parents make a request to home educate their children, where they take them out of school, that if we have safeguarding concerns or a child protection investigation is underway, we'll make sure that local councils are able to deny that request that parents have if they're concerned about the well-being of children. There's a range of other measures in the bill that we're setting out today about how we all need to work together to share information, whether that's police, health, education, to really work to protect children and to keep them safe. It's a landmark piece of legislation.
Homeschooling has gone up around 20%. Do you think that that's an indication that people don't have faith in the education system, or is it a way that people are managing to, I suppose, escape from authority? I think there's something like 300,000 children are considered missing from school at the moment.
I think it's a range of factors, but I am concerned about the big increase that we've seen post-pandemic in the number of children who are being home educated. I think some of that is about children who have mental health needs or children with special educational needs and disabilities where their parents feel their support needs are not being met within the classroom, within school. That's why we are determined to reform the SEND system. We know it's not working at the moment, that parents have lost confidence. It will be a tough job to turn that around, but we really want to make sure it happens. But with those more serious cases where there are concerns about making sure a child is being kept safe from harm, I think it is right that we bring in greater powers to make sure we know where children are and we can take action to support them.
In terms of knowing what's going on, I want to extend this to talk about our universities and our educational systems in relation to the big news doing the rounds, of course, this Chinese alleged spy. Universities often the way into this country for many people legally, but it was in this particular instance also the way that Yang Tembo made his way into the United Kingdom. How can you reassure us that national security is being maintained in our universities and that this funding crisis that they're facing isn't leading us to making poor decisions?
National security is our number one priority, as you'd expect of any government. It is the first duty of any government to keep our country safe. And where it comes to our relationship with China, whether that's in terms of the engagement that we have at a diplomatic level or through politicians, or what happens with our university campuses, we will always act in the British national interest. Of course, there are students from around the world who come to study at our universities. They make a big economic contribution. And the reason that they come here is because our universities are amongst some of the best in the world. They offer a brilliant education. But our universities do have responsibilities and duties, but we as government have a responsibility too to protect Britain's national interest and to make sure that our engagement with China is always focused on what is doing right by British interests.
But to be clear, I mean, does it worry you that our British institutions and our universities are being used by hostile states to try and influence us?
We have to be ever vigilant to the risks and threats that we face from a range of different quarters. That is, we do live in a very volatile world with lots of threats from both state and non-state actors. And our universities have responsibilities and duties that they must uphold. But we as a government will do everything that we can to keep our country safe, to put Britain's national interest first.
And just lastly, I want to ask you about hospices. On GB News, we are focusing on those today and the pressure that they're under. 1 in 5 saying that they're considering closures. There's problems with retaining and recruiting nurses. And we're told today that many hospices are saying they're having to spend £5 million more per year as a result of the national insurance employer increases that they've been hit with from your Chancellor. Isn't that an example that hospices should really be exempt from this?
Hospices do tremendous work to support people right across the country with palliative and end-of-life care, and I've seen myself through personal experience just how crucial they are. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, also knows how important our hospices are. So much of their work is funded through the NHS, but they do also depend on private and charitable donations alongside that too. He'll be setting out further measures around what we can do to support hospices before too long.
Okay. Bridget Phillips, Education Secretary, thanks very much for your time.
And thank you very much indeed for watching and listening. That's it from us today. We'll be back tomorrow to do it all again. Hope you'll be there. Up next, it's Miriam and Andrew.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Gradually turning more unsettled from the west with strengthening winds and also some outbreaks of rain moving in, but it is going to be largely mild for the time of year. Fairly settled across the south and southeast, though plenty of cloud and perhaps some quite murky conditions across the southeast to start with some fog around hilly areas, and gradually turning more unsettled from the west as we see outbreaks of rain across parts of Scotland and then later on moving into parts of Northern Ireland and western parts of England and Wales. This could be quite heavy and persistent at times, particularly in the afternoon across northern parts of Scotland, and it is going to turn more and more blustery from the west throughout the day too, but those temperatures generally holding up between the low double digits. As we finish off the day, those outbreaks of rain set to continue, turning heavy at times around western and northern parts of Scotland, and still those blustery winds, particularly around coastal areas. Outbreaks of rain continuing too across Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, and turning very blustery through into the Irish Sea Channel as well. And once again, those outbreaks of rain for western parts of Wales and southwest England, where once again this could turn heavy for a time. Across the far southeast,